Before we get started, there are some breakfast tacos and bagels and fruit, coffee, and water in the back, courtesy of Ashbrit Environmental, today's sponsor. So please give them a round of applause. Thanks, everybody, for being here today. June 1st, happy hurricane season. I think which just starts kick things off today. We are here with a 2017 version and 2017's workshop series on disaster debris management, sponsored by Houston-Galveston Area Council. Thank you so much for those in attendance, as well as the 20 or so people that are online on the webinar. My name is John Burry, and with me today is Karen Self. And so we're going to be taking you through the morning, talking about 2016's disasters. We're going to talk about changes in debris management planning, and we have a great trivia contest that Karen has put together today. So with some prizes at the end, so it's worth sticking around.
You want to just go through what they've got?
Yeah, let's do that. Make sure everybody has it. Yeah.
Right. So we have a packet of materials for you today. We've got our agenda, so you can keep track of how well we're staying on top of our time. We also have the presentation handout, and I believe it's available electronically as well. We have a sign-in sheet at the front, so if you didn't sign in, please make sure that you sign in. And then we also have a feedback form, so we can make these better every year. So we love your feedback. We try to incorporate it into every year's workshop series. So if you can, as we're going through it today, if you can take the time to fill this out, that would be great.
All right. So today's agenda, just briefly going through that debris 101, debris planning. One of the things I'm going to try not to do is leave this presentation to go have a baby, or at least my wife. I don't know, in the last workshop, I got to tell you, I've told this story a lot. It's one of my favorites. But in the last workshop on debris and mitigation last year, we at the second break, my wife calls me and in tears and says, "Hey, the doctor's going to check me in. I have high blood pressure. We're having this baby today." And this is our fourth kid, okay? And so we hadn't packed, we hadn't really prepared. I don't have a baby room set up, none of this stuff. And it was like 2 or 3 weeks early. Anyway, I'm going to have that conversation. Luckily, Karen and another colleague, Ann, stepped right in to finish strong. But my favorite part was about 6 months later, they told me that I had taken a hot mic into the restroom.
I think you went to go grab.
I think, yeah, and Carl, you went to go grab to tell me that that I should turn that thing off. But anyways, yeah, I had a baby, bouncing baby boy, Grant Lewis, and so he is doing well, 9 months, 9.5 months, and so happy to be here at H-GAC. So a brief introduction, as we mentioned, June 1st, hurricane season begins. Obviously, the Gulf Coast's greatest natural hazard is hurricanes. Last year, we're going to talk about some of the last year's hurricanes. Had a couple of hurricanes that impacted Florida. Longest drought in Florida history was broken, snapped last year with the landfall of Hurricane, it was Hermine and Matthew, that impacted the southeast United States. And here's a look at our names.
Yes. So all the names are represented by different photos of different famous people for each name. On the previous slide, one of the things that we'll talk about a little later on is that because of this weakened El Nino situation, there may be more of an active season in the Gulf. So El Nino is always fascinating to do some research on. Everybody talks about El Nino, but do you actually know what's going on there? So there's a lot of forecasts that are saying because of this weekend El Nino, we might have a more active hurricane season this year. So these are your 2017 hurricane names for this year. Some
My favorite's Tammy Faye Baker. I like that one. I'm gonna be rooting to see if we can make it to the T's. Or Harvey. I like Steve Harvey.
Cindy's up there, Cindy Brady. So we'll have some trivia at the end, so some of this might be important later.
So if we can go around, if we could just go briefly around the room, just say your name and your agency. And I will kick things off. My name is John Burry, and I'm with Tetra Tech. I have been doing disaster recovery and emergency management for the last 16 years actually. First project was with H-GAC, doing a regional debris management plan. Since that time, I've been deployed on 41 different disasters and worked with over 100 clients doing all phases of disaster recovery and FEMA public assistance. And so I'm really happy to be here today. So with that, Rob, name and agency.
Rob, is that on? Yeah, hot mic. Rob Ray, Senior Vice President, Ashford Environmental. Everybody enjoy the tacos and drink plenty of coffee.
Not that exciting. Rita Anderson, Friesen Nichols.
Hi, Jeffrey LaCour, Mitigation Planner with the City of Houston.
David Jordan, Emergency Management Coordinator at City of Brazoria.
Scott Rabin, Area Superintendent, Harris County Precinct 3.
Tracy McKay, Harris County Precinct 3.
Elisa Max, Harris County Engineering Department.
Angela McDowell, the University of Texas Medical Branch.
Erin Livingston, H-GAC.
My name is Joe Perucci. I'm with the City of Houston Parks and Recreation Department.
Hi, my name is Victor Cordova. I'm with the Houston Parks Department.
I'm Diego Linares, City of Sugar Land Environmental Coordinator.
Hi, I'm Peggy Colligan, City of Houston Housing and Community Development Department.
Maricela Lozano, Harris County Pollution Control.
Carl Dix, Director of Client Services, Series Environmental.
Scott Petty, Harris County Attorney's Office.
Clayton Como, Galveston County Road and Bridge.
William Como, Galveston County Road and Bridge.
John Watson, Harris County Flood Control District.
Tommy Webster, Operations Manager, Phillips and Jordan.
Henry Hefty with 24-hour composting.
Saeed Moinuddin, City of Houston, Public Works Engineering.
Juan Hernandez, City of Stafford, Public Works.
Robert Wagner, City of Stafford.
Ivan Lonzo, Harris County Community Services Department.
Cecil Bowery, League City.
Jody Hooks, Public Works Manager for the City of League City.
Ryan Chill, EMC, League City.
Shauna Tubbs, Purchasing Manager, League City. Kylie Bach, Fire, City of League City.
Raymond Russell, Fort Bend County Sheriff's Department.
Don Race, I'm with the Fort Bend County Road and Bridge.
James Wenzel, Fort Bend County Road and Bridge.
Scott Wehat, Fort Bend County Road and Bridge. Johnny Cooper, Fort Bend County Road and Bridge.
All right, thank you. And we have quite a few people that are also...
You got to introduce yourself.
Oh, I'm Karen Self. I'm with Tetra Tech. I do a lot of debris management planning. Sometimes they make me go out in the field and put a hard hat on and a vest to do some operations, but mostly debris management planning and then post-disaster long-term recovery planning. So been with Tetra Tech for about 10 years.
All right. Thank you so much. And I don't want to turn that off there. And I did take a peek at those who are participating remotely. Got some folks from Montgomery County as well as Galveston County, Matagorda County, City of Seabrook, and others. So from various disciplines, it sounds like we got a great mix of public and private sector, folks representing disposal and composting, as well as emergency management, and even the UT Medical Branch. So this is a great audience. Thank you so much. So again, purpose is, I do see some familiar faces, but some new faces as well. So some of this is going to be a refresher. Some of this is going to be old hat, but some of it you may be hearing it for the first time. We're going to be talking about some of the key considerations as you put together a debris management plan. I can't tell you in all the projects that we've done, those that have sat down, thought about this, done a debris management plan are so much better off than those who are being inundated with it for the first time. Please feel free to make comments. This mic is going to be hopefully as active as it was just a minute ago. If you do have questions, for those of you who are listening on the phone and participating via webinar, please don't hesitate to type in your questions. We will get those answered as much as possible. I will say that we are going to have one shift in the agenda. I forgot to mention this. We are going to have Ronnie Barnes with H-GAC Buy. That's the Cooperative Purchasing Program. He's going to come down right at about 9 o'clock, and we're going to have a discussion about the H-GAC Cooperative Purchasing Program. There has been a lot of talk, a lot of dialogue between FEMA, the state, H-GAC, and some end users about this, and I think it's important in this forum because we have such a diverse audience from around the region to address, take a moment to discuss that. So answer any questions that might be lingering out there. So I forgot to mention that earlier. So Debris 101. For those of you who are not familiar with it, we do have an updated FEMA policy manual. The Public Assistance Policy or Program and Policy Guide, or the PAPA-G. That's what they're calling it in Georgia. That seems to be the new nickname, the PAPA-G. And really what it did was it took all the various FEMA guidance documents and put it under one roof. This was in effect last year in January. There has been some minor revisions made to the document. Nothing all that groundbreaking or earth-shattering, but when it comes to disasters, which I know we had 2 disasters that were declared in 2016 in April and May of last year here in the region. So you may be familiar with it, but for those of you who weren't impacted, like say in Galveston County or some of the eastern or northern parts of the community, this is something that is very important to be aware of.
Especially when you talk about debris management planning, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. You're going to be referencing this document instead of the 9500 series and some of those FEMA 325 and all that, those older documents that are now part of this new PAPA-G.
PAPA-G, yes, that's right. So what are some of the federal agencies that are involved in debris management? Here's a quick listing of those. I mean, obviously your main ones are FEMA, but it's really important to understand that it's not just going to fall upon FEMA, that there are organizations like the Natural Resource Conservation Service. They have an emergency watershed protection program that's designed to address debris in watersheds. I know Mr. Watson, Harris County Flood Control, is very familiar with that exchange and how that works or may not work as well. But there are a lot of different agencies that are involved. EPA for animal health issues. I know Fort Bend County was dealing with a lot of those after the flood with some of the large animals that Farm Bureau never got into the federal agency, but at the state level, it's important. So just a quick list if you're wondering who all is involved.
A couple of folks that aren't listed up here are volunteer organizations. They also get involved post-disaster. So when you have, certain communities that can't get their debris to the right-of-way, the elderly community, things like that, volunteer organizations have been really active in some of the tornado and flooding events that we've been working with. So they're another great resource to tap into.
Absolutely, great point there. So once a disaster does happen, and especially in a disaster where you have a wind event or where you have storm surge, less so when there is more of your basin traditional flooding. I don't know. I'm gonna stand over here. I'll wait from you. That there is going to be that need to clear the roadway. I'm sorry, guys. I think it's this one.
Oh.
Maybe. To clear the right-of-way. Oh. Okay. All right. Then I'll stand right here. That could be it. So yeah, stop doing that. So it could be the situation where you're going to need to clear the debris off the right-of-way, and that time really is the most appropriate way is to focus on capturing your data, capturing your documentation, or compensating your contractor on a time and materials basis, meaning you have hourly equipment rates, hourly labor rates, because of the fact that there is no unit of measure, no quantification, and it's so critical to get the roadways cleared. Really, that should be the focus, not where is it going to go, anything along those lines. And I think from a planning perspective, focusing on identifying those roads, which ones are the most critical, is a very important component of the planning process.
Right, and especially when you're talking about road segments that go through multiple jurisdictions and having that coordination to make sure that if you're identifying a critical path in your jurisdiction, that it aligns with some of your neighbors as well.
So once we do get into that process of collecting the debris, I think it's, I know it is rather critical to understand how much volume is out there. And measuring the capacity of your vehicles, whether it's your road and bridge or public works or solid waste containers, whether it's your contractors' trucks that are brought in here as well. It is perhaps the most critical element of that process because everybody wants to know how much did you pick up and how much did you spend. Tracking the debris quantities it's a very, very important piece of this because that's got to happen from the beginning. I think there's some good opportunities to continue to verify the quantities, especially when you do bring contractors in, to make sure that those trucks haven't been altered. There's, you always watch out for fraud in every aspect of it, but identifying the loading units and knowing how much is out there is something that's really the root, if you will, the basics of the process and having those measurements. Yes, ma'am. Right. No, that's a great question. So the question was, when we talk about periodic recertification, how often, what that involved, and why do it? There can be modifications made to different hauling vehicles, and I think that from a documentation perspective, if you implement or develop an SOP that does some spot checks of these vehicles, saying, hey, after they dump a load, saying, hey, why don't you come over here, let's just do a quick remeasure, that, oftentimes you can just make sure that what it was measured in at isn't extremely different, like 20 cubic yards different than what it was measured. So again, just something from a QA/QC perspective is also a fraud prevention perspective. I honestly think it would be, no, I think you should remeasure it at the time of the event. In my opinion, because unit numbers change and VIN numbers change and vehicles change, and I think it would be good to be able to bring to the table, hey, we certified it for planning purposes, but at the time of the event, we went back and did a recertification of our vehicles, and now we're using that. I think that is a much less risk. That's more of to mitigate any risk of anyone questioning the validity of it. great question. All right, one question is, what are the debris basics? What's the blocking and tackling, if you will, of the debris program? It's got to be the result of an event. It has to be eligible location, so it's got to be your responsibility, and it's got to be documented from collection to final disposal. So really, those are the three things. Again, if it's not your problem, not your responsibility, it's got to be in the right place along the right-of-way or in a public use area, and it's got to be documented from cradle to grave. So, what is the right-of-way and what do you see? Generally speaking, you have vegetative debris, construction and demolition debris, household hazardous waste, and white goods. And we're going to go through some of those different debris streams right now. But I think what is really good, and Karen, perhaps you can talk about some of the foreshadowing of the next workshop as well, but the public information piece, because I know that's something that's near and dear to your heart and something you've spent a lot of time focusing on.
It seems that residents really understand their municipal solid waste collection. They know which day the trucks are coming. They know exactly which containers it needs to be in. They know how to put their recycled materials out to be collected. It's sort of like ingrained in them. At least me, as a resident, I know it's coming on Mondays and Thursdays, and recycling is only once a week. We know when our bulk pickup is. When you get into disaster debris, it's different. It changes. The separation is different. You're not bagging anything. You're not bundling anything. It depends on what your collection strategy is. So you have to kind of retrain your residents on how to set this out. If they set it out correctly, you can collect it more efficiently, more effectively. It can be separated and recycled more easily. So making sure that you get information out to them in a visual format so they can really understand, exactly how to set all this stuff out. We used to, in our debris management plans, we used to be real heavy on this long public announcement or these long press releases and all this stuff. And really, you need a picture. You need a visual aid to say this is how you set it out, and then that just makes it more easy to collect and recycle and do all the things you need to do and get it off the right of way as soon as possible.
And I'll tell you, this is the graphic that H-GAC put together a couple, 3 years ago, and it's been used all over the country. In fact, it was used in here in the Houston area. City of Houston has used it. I know after the floods last year, Fort Bend and Brazoria County had used this. I'll also tell you, the city of Baton Rouge and the state of Louisiana has used that. Communities in South Carolina and Georgia have also used that as well. I will tell you, I think it's on the website. You can pull it down. You can even make tweaks to this, whereas maybe you're not collecting e-waste or household hazardous waste, and you want to take that off. You don't want to confuse residents. That you can make some modifications. If you need to simplify it a little bit to make it just vegetative debris and construction and demolition, that you can make those changes, put your logo on it. There's some videos as well that are out there. So it's a really flexible, easy to read. It's in English and Spanish, and there's we're going to have the next workshop is going to be focusing on communication, because that really has changed a lot in the last several years.
I was just going to say the editable version is not online. I do have that though. I just have the
the basic. Okay.
But yeah, if you need the editable version, however you say that, I don't know if that's the right word, but
the one you can change up, I guess. Yes. Yeah. So yeah.
And somebody in Canada used it too.
Oh, what's that? In Canada?
Canada. Remember, yeah.
And international, Mr. Worldwide. Yeah, that's it. We've got it. This is, but it's a real easy and a real marketable tool for you to use. So again, what I do want to do is I do want to take a quick break because we've got Ronnie Barnes here and Cheryl with H-GAC BUY and H-GAC, and I do want to take just a brief moment to have them come up and talk about the cooperative purchasing, some of the changes, what's going on in the last 12 months or so in the program.
All right, here is the mic.
The floor is yours.
Good morning. I'll try to be quick here. The Office of Inspector General, Department of Homeland Security, which is responsible for overseeing FEMA activity, audited a single end user that had used our contracts from Cooperative Purchasing and from Chill's contract, and they found some issues with, or they highlighted some issues they had with our procurement, the way we went about establishing the contract. And because of they found those things, they brought them to our attention. We've addressed them. There hadn't been a resolution through their office on it just yet, but we're confident that what we presented to them will suffice. But in the meantime, we took a look at what we had been doing and decided to procure the contracts that we have available for members to use, which is the All Hazards Preparedness and Disaster Planning and Consulting contract, and then the debris removal and clearance contract, which used to be under C&E. It's now become a part of the Cooperative Purchasing contract portfolio. We have a pre-bid conference for that particular contract on June 13th in the room next door. So we'll be re-procuring both of those contracts to address the issues that FEMA has raised or OIG has raised about our procurement. Our plan is to have the planning and consulting contract in place for August 1st, and the other one to be in place for the removal and clearance services to be in place September 1st. We're a bit behind the 8 ball, but we wanted to make sure that we learned all we could from what was being discussed in the audit so we could address it in the new procurement, and then we would have contracts available for our membership to use that should satisfy whatever it is.
So as Ronnie's group is taking over the actual contract, Aaron and I will still work on the training and assistance for you guys if you need procurement assistance. That, for example, that we have some sheets that can help you do the scoring if you're looking at pricing, compare apples to apples. That we'll have those available for y'all. Once we ever find out what the resolution with FEMA and OIG's office with the county that's being audited, that we will let you know. Probably not publicly, but call us or one of the workshops that will let you know. As you guys know, that the OIG's office makes a lot of comments. They don't necessarily, FEMA doesn't necessarily accept all their comments. What happens is the OIG office puts out the report and has everything in there. Let's go see how actually something is resolved. That is great. That we can help you. And if you have a particular comment or concern about your current contract, possibly issues, if you want to talk to Aaron and I'm leaving about 5 minutes to the doctor's appointment at 9:30, but I'll be back and Aaron will be here all afternoon or all morning, so we can help you then.
Great. So, go ahead, Elisa.
In my opinion,
You got to repeat the question.
So the question is if you're using the H-GAC's household hazardous waste or electronics recycling contract, if that is impacted or not. Let us think about it. Given it depends on some of what OIG office tells us when they put the impact of the super circular, because it predates the super circular, so it depends on how they're going to grandfather it in. And we've gotten mixed comments from FEMA and our attorney and various things. So we'll look into it. If you're using just state funds or the H-GAC grant program to do your programs, you're good. But if you're using your FEMA program, that's what we need. Let me think about it a little. It really depends on how the super circular is looked at.
So, quick question. So, based on your experience with the OIG and FEMA on this, and for those who may be looking to procure, what are the things that they should be watching out for, looking out for? Or maybe what were some of the things that you could maybe share as far as lessons learned from this experience? Procurement, putting a procurement out. Sorry, yeah.
So we've had our have our procurement solicitation documents reviewed by an attorney who is a FEMA expert. And the only issue that was raised in the audit was affirmative steps were not taken 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that are listed in 2 CFR. And so we modified our spec to cover those particular steps specifically, but there was nothing else in the audit of our contract that they raised. Just they found something 10 years ago. Another county was audited using the same contract, and they said, "Woohoo! This is great. You guys did a wonderful job." And then 10 years later, they take a look at the same document and find problems with it. So.
Yeah, the same reviewer.
The changes that we made to the all hazards are simple. We just added those 2 CFR affirmative steps as part of the requirement for the respondents. In the debris removal, we modeled it after the all hazards contract, so you engage those vendors through an end user service agreement. All of the pricing, all of the requirements for procurement on a formal basis are satisfied. Those prices will be exposed in the bid process, be a part of the evaluation, and they will be the ceiling of the pricing. So you'll be able to go to the site, see what's available, see who's available, and do some budgeting, some forecasting of what those costs might be ahead of time. Those prices will be fixed. There is a mechanism for them to increase the pricing as a price change along the way during the term of the contract, but there'll be no surprises. Everything that they've said they're going to offer has a price, has a rate, and that is the ceiling. They can always go down if they want to ensure that they get your business in that contract.
Those affirmative steps are for small and minority women business enterprises. Yes, enterprises. So incorporating them into the bid process, 2 CFR 200.321. So they were the same 6 steps that were found in 44 CFR 1336, and so they've just been carried forward. Cheryl, any thoughts, comments that you could about the process?
Not really. Just as you guys document, that realize that your FEMA person can change over time. OIG office necessarily doesn't work with FEMA, and so it can be ongoing, lack of a better word, confrontation. You might think it's a negotiation, but in the long run, it's not a negotiation. It is a little bit more of a confrontation, and you just have to be diligent. That one of my former colleagues is here, and he used to be there, and now he's with the city of Houston. If you want some other personal experience from somebody who was on the state and federal side, Jeff LeCur, you want to raise your hand, you can talk to him, but I know the contractors have been involved in this. And this isn't something specific to the Houston-Galveston Area Council or anywhere that I think you guys may have seen. I think in November of 14 or 15, there was a report that came out, and I may have the numbers wrong, but of like a $325 million that FEMA obligated. The OIG's office questioned like 92.5% of those costs. So again, it's not that they necessarily got those funds back, but they questioned it. So you can see the OIG's office is really just looking at everything, and it really turns to be with the meaty-weedy sort of information.
Yeah, the contracting and the minority and women-owned business, it seems to be a very big focal point. Fair and open competition, the minority-owned women business, meeting those 6 steps, and documenting your ability to do that seemed to be something that has been a very, at least in H-GAC's case, been a very a critical part of that.
And when you read the reports, that some of it happened that when you looked at FEMA's, some of their field guidance, and I can't remember what year it was, it actually was in conflict with the requirements, the CFR, so there was always some confusion on FEMA's part. And again, as Ronnie mentioned, the one that when FEMA looked at ours said great procurement, same reviewer came back and said, no, not a good procurement. So it's a little bit ongoing.
Yeah.
And I got to run.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much, Ronnie. Thank you so much, Cheryl. If you want to just give that to Aaron there. But listen, I think it was important. I sat up in bed last night and I realized that what we didn't address the H-GAC by. I know that there's been a couple of conferences, National Hurricane Conference, Texas Emergency Management Conference, where people have come up to me, folks in the industry have come up to me asking questions about the cooperative purchasing program and the availability of those. So I think it's important to understand that H-GAC is addressing those things with the OIG and is reissuing some of those contracts. So, and Aaron, you can raise your hand. Everybody knows Aaron Livingston, but yeah, any questions, she can hopefully get those answered or be somebody to get the answer to that question. So, so back to the prepared remarks. So right-of-way collection, again, just general 90% of the debris operation occurs on the right-of-way. I'd say that's probably the easiest component of the debris program. Right-of-way is anywhere between the road, the edge of pavement, and either the edge of the sidewalk or the tree line. Again, a little more difficult in some rural areas to identify, but generally speaking, right near the roadway. This is, like I said, something in floods or in very compacted areas. It's really, really difficult to get all the debris on the right-of-way. So the need for multiple passes through the community are always necessary, especially I know in areas of Houston and even in Fort Bend County and Brazoria County, things take time to get out. And floods, I mean, I don't know, in Baton Rouge, I think they're on their 16th pass following the Great Flood there. I mean, I think it's officially their third pass, but I mean, you see a lot of debris that comes out. Floods are notorious for taking a long time for the debris to get out. I think that was me, Karen. But, and even the volunteer organizations, I know you were talking about them being active, but they've really been able to get out there and set debris out.
Yeah, we've been seeing that a lot in tornadoes and flooding, some of these more isolated incidents. They've got equipment, they've got people. Sometimes the documentation isn't quite there, so you've got to coach them a little bit with documenting their time and who was out there, but they do have a lot of resources, and especially for maybe some debris operations that aren't part of your typical public assistance, projects like roof balls and things like that. They can be really helpful with.
Yeah, and this is my favorite. I mean, the You Loot We Shoot Smith & Wesson 9mm sign right there. I mean, that guy's America. I like that. You see a lot of that out there. So I remember I was in Pensacola Beach, Perdido Key actually, and they had a You Loot We Shoot sign. And in the O's of the You Loot, they were upside down, smiley faces, frowny faces, and then the We Shoot, they all smiles in those O's. So looting obviously is a big concern in the community as well. But from a planning perspective, if there's two things that I think you can take away from this workshop that you need to do before the next disaster is, number one, look at your procurement, look at what kind of contracts you have in place, and take a look at those standards that we talked about that Ronnie mentioned, because that is the biggest focal point, and debris management sites. These debris management sites are constantly changing, and from a speed and efficiency perspective, identifying these sites is a really, really big component of that.
Especially when you get into more of your urban areas where you don't have as much green space. I don't know if you probably don't have that problem here. I mean, you've got space available, but in some communities where you just don't have any open parcels of land, you kind of have to get a little creative and make sure that again, if you're doing some multi-jurisdictional coordination, especially if you've got some sort of agreement with a city, if you're a county that you're going to be taking and helping with their debris or managing their debris at your debris management site, that you guys talk about it beforehand so everybody knows who's using what. And then also private sites. Get your legal folks involved. I know in a couple of cases, you know, talk about Fort Bend County again, having to use a couple of private sites there, making sure that the agreements, the land use agreements have been vetted by legal counsel. Any compensation for the use of these sites gets ironed out. But hey, where are you going to take it before you take it to the landfill? Because at that point, that's where your compensation, that's where the loads are tracked. You have inspection towers, which are pictured here, where the truck drives under them. You're going to look at the load of debris. You're going to track it, see how full that is compared to the volumetric measured capacity of that truck. Each one of these sites has to be approved by the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. We've had TCEQ staff come to several of these presentations in the past, and they've been a great partner. They've always been very, very fast in authorizing and approving these sites. And is that this looks like a new web address? Is that a new web address there? Yeah, I think we'll click on it to make sure. But yeah, there was some updated information. So yeah, they do. There is a process to pre-identify and work with the TCEQ regional office to pre-identify debris management sites. However, they do request that at the time of the disaster that you get those sites approved. So, but I have never, I mean, as I've worked with a lot of DEPs or Department of Environmental Protection in various states. TCEQ is a great partner to work with. They've been always very, very easy and collaborative when identifying these debris sites. Yeah, there are some states that are very restrictive on this. So the fact that they offer this like pre-qualification process, or we'll work with you really quickly on it, is really an asset, because there's some states that, I mean, you can't even pre-qualify anything without doing a environmental impact statement, which is a tremendous effort, and you might not ever use that site. So the link there will take you to more information in the form to fill out for to do the pre-qualification. Yeah, we were doing a debris plan in California, and those guys are tough. Yeah, tough. You can identify your debris site, and you can identify open parcels of land, and you can identify your requirements, but you can't apply your requirements to your open parcels of land. Otherwise, you have to do an environmental impact statement or a phase 2. I mean, if you take that next step to marry A plus B, or do the actual equation to figure out what C is, then it triggers all these conditions. And so for those debris plans, you have to you can't actually do this analysis officially without triggering a environmental condition. What they use is sites that, and you can do this too with your debris management plans if it makes it easier, but using sites that are already that already have permits to take waste, so like transfer stations and things like that. They do use that. Yep. Yeah. Exactly. So white goods, really nasty stuff there. I mean, my least favorite part of the debris process. A lot of these white goods that are generated. It always surprises me as to whether or not white goods are going to come out, or whether it's not that they will or won't come out, but whether or not that will be a part of you as a local government's debris stream, because a lot of times scavengers will pick these debris, this debris stream up, and in the middle of the night type of thing. I had a friend who was doing some work over in Newton County, over in southeast Texas. And in that situation, scavengers were about. However, they were also, there was also remarks that they were looting the area, and so the sheriff cracked down. And so then they became a part of the debris stream once the sheriff said, hey, no scavenging for the white goods, and they, now were a part of your collection. So, so again, just to be aware of that is a part. Refrigerators, freezers,
white goods meaning anything that's generally white at the appliance store, your appliances, and the need for the removal of Freon in some cases, because some of those, like your refrigerators, like your AC, they may need to have fluid removed. And then e-waste or e-scrap or electronics becomes a important, especially your CRTs, your cathode ray tube, video monitors, anything like that. I think we had several thousand pounds of this coming out after the last flood, and making sure that that is communicated to the public, the need to keep that from the waste stream. There are a lot of specialized programs out there, and the one thing I want to communicate, and these are just a few: leaning trees, hanging limbs, vehicles, boats, private property, parks and recreational areas, canals and waterways. These are just a few programs out there. But listen, what I want to tell you is there's always something that may pop up. It could be a levee, it could be some subsurface drainage program, it could be a demolition program. What I'll tell you is that this is not debris 101, this is debris 601 type of thing. When you get to that, I mean, I was sitting there thinking with young lady from UTMB, UTMB or UTMB. I'm sitting here going, okay, well, medical waste, you could have carcasses, you could, I don't know what else you could have there. And I was sitting there, I was like, man, that's not debris 101. That is some higher order debris stuff there, and you got to watch out for that thing. And that is, I guess what I'll say is that it's really important to know that it's not just your basic stuff that's out there. With debris management, you could be dealing with all sorts of crazy things. Leaning trees, hanging limbs, they have various requirements, 2 inches or greater. This is all found in the Papa G's, Public Assistance Policy and Program Guide. Leaning trees, you can learn about the parts of the tree on this if you don't know. Exposed heartwood, your branches, your crown, your roots, that's grass, bark, leaves.
John, just a quick comment on the special debris program.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
So with Category A, when you get a Category A declaration, it covers right-of-way, white goods, a few other things, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So these are special programs that you need to get
special permission
for. So that's another differentiator between your ROW and some of these things where you've got to get, your Cat A doesn't necessarily allow you to go and do these things under the public assistance program. You got to get FEMA buy-in on this.
That's a really great point there, is that when you're looking at doing some of this stuff where it's, higher order debris operations, I mean, this is not one of these times, and I've probably said this before because I know I'm guilty of it. My wife can tell you that I'm really good at begging for forgiveness versus asking for permission. And this is not one of those times. This is one of these times where you got to say, hey, I got to go to my, the state has compliance. They have liaisons now. Actually, one young lady, Ms. Rebecca Kennedy, formerly with H-GAC, is now with the state, and she's working with various applicants. But, this is not one of those like, hey, I'm going to, we can kind of sweep this under the rug. We have to. You have to get some. You got to let some people know, make some decisions so that they can. You can figure those things out. Because you're right. These are you have to get pre-approval for all these sorts of things.
And then if you don't get the pre-approval, you've got to make the decision on whether or not you're going to do it regardless. So if you're going to pay for the program.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, some of this stuff you just got to do, or try to find some funding source later through a private. Source like donations, or you can maybe HUD through the CDBG DR program could fund some of this stuff. You could do that. Ms. Matt.
Okay, sorry I keep asking questions. I know it's taking longer and longer, it seems, to get disaster declarations out. And some of these things that are here, like, for example, private property entry. I know people think that's going and helping out someone near their house, but it's also gated subdivisions and areas where we tend to have to make earlier decisions than when we may get a declaration. Do you know, have you seen if they're allowing retroactive approvals? So if you did the work before they approved you doing the work, are they doing reimbursement? Or how's that working? Or what are other people doing on these?
So we've been having this discussion in Florida because
Right.
there are quite a few right of entry programs because we have tons of gated communities and tons of mobile home parks. And when you get into that, you have a different owner. Sometimes you have individual owners for the different parts. So it's very complicated, and it does take a long time. And the way that it's been implemented post-Matthew has differed greatly from county to county. Yeah, so it's really, it's complicated, and you do have to make the decision early. There are steps for documentation that you can do, so making sure your ordinances and things like that allow for you to go onto private property if you have nuisance and abatement. And John, you might be able to talk a little bit more of the details on this better than I can, but there are steps you can have in place pre-disaster that will help make the argument for you to go on private property.
I think, and Rob or Carl or Tommy, maybe, and these guys are with the haulers, all did stuff in Hurricane Matthew. The question was, for those of you, make sure that they heard it, is gated communities and private roads, because that seemed to be the issue du jour for Hurricane Matthew. We did not have a situation in Hurricane Matthew of a late declaration, but we did have the situation where there was some lag time between the approval of some of these gated communities. It was a lot longer than a lot of communities really wanted. And so I don't know, did they do retroactive there? Mr. Ray, you can maybe comment, because I'm...
Thanks, Aaron. I know we had the situation in Florida, South Carolina, and Georgia. We had 26 contracts activated simultaneously, and probably at least half of those ran into this situation. And John, Tommy, or Carl will probably tell you as well, it becomes a political nightmare, especially if you don't act quickly, because usually those are the communities where you have your highest tax base. So most of our clients were forced to act as if they were going to get these PPDR or right of entry programs authorized in the gated communities. I can tell you probably about 75% of our clients were able to receive those programs and get those authorized, but some were not. And like Karen said it best, I mean, it's not a state-to-state issue as far as differing circumstances, different decisions, how they go about the decisions. It's a county-to-county, city-to-city. I mean, we had clients in Volusia County, Florida, that some of their programs were authorized, some of them were not. And as far as when you look at the programs themselves, they appear to be apples-to-apples programs. So there's a lot of inconsistency out there. It puts the local government in a bad position, but the decisions do have to be made. And what most of our clients did is they went ahead and made the decision hoping that they would get authorization. Again, most did, but to your guys' point, you cannot emphasize enough the need for documenting from day one what you do everywhere, but especially in those communities if you do make the decision to go ahead and start picking up that debris.
Yeah, and it was funny. Okay, so the Hurricane Matthew, I'm going to drill down to that. That hit Florida, Georgia, North and South Carolina, 4 Matthew states that were impacted. Right? They were all in the same FEMA region. Did I miss one? Virginia. Okay. But the majority of what was impacted by Matthew was in FEMA Region 4. So you'd think that they would apply the same standard across the same FEMA region, or at the state level, or at the county level. And that wasn't the case. And I think Rob made a great point, which said, and Karen, you said this too, is look, each case is unique. They're going to apply different standards. They're going to apply different protocols into identifying what they're. Just know your risk. So that's your third thing that you should do. So procurement, debris sites, and these private roads and gated communities, knowing where they are in your community and you having that road list layer ready to understand. I think we need to underscore that as a good planning assumption. That doesn't help. Sorry. So yeah, that is. But yeah, no, great point there. Thank you for bringing that up. Okay, I'm going to move on to Parks and Recreation, which I know we got a couple of guys from Houston Parks and that are out there, but that is something that is absolutely covered in the normal debris removal operations. However, the need to track your parks debris separately and just the need for different equipment and some of the other considerations. And Carl, I'll pick on you because I know you had tons of fun in Savannah, Georgia and Albany, Georgia after in the parks and some of these parks being historic parks. And so maybe you could tell that story there.
It's more of a nightmare.
Crazy it was.
It's more of a nightmare.
Yeah, that's true. Yes, not.
It was. I mean, it was a very interesting experience. First off, Savannah is essentially one gigantic historical park. So as we were working through a lot of the issues, taking down trees, removing stumps and whatnot, we had to work very closely with the state, with FEMA, with SHPO, with tribal historic preservation offices to write specific plans on a per park basis on how we were going to manage that process. In particular, how we were going to have an archaeologist on staff to follow our crews around, be able to dig through a root ball, a stump hole prior to us excavating it, then flipping over that stump, excavating the very underside of that root ball, and then finally removing it. In Savannah, the process alone was taking us roughly 3 hours to remove one stump, which, you know, obviously increased our costs substantially. So then we were having to go back and work with FEMA to get change orders on such a thing. But every time that we went into a park, I had to write a new plan, what that process was going to be. And the big thing with SHPO and with the Tribal Historic Preservation Office, they were very concerned that we were, one, going to disturb a historical site, but also change the aesthetics of the overall community and the park itself. One particular one that I've been working on and still working on, we finally just got approval and started Wednesday, is in Albany, Georgia, Tiff Park, this old carriage road that was lined with these, 150-year-old oaks, just very gorgeous. But, with that, we had to hire, or the city had to go out and hire an archaeologist through an RFP process that way it could be documented and they could go back and seek reimbursement, following the project. But that person has been continually going with us and monitoring everything that we're doing. We can't disturb more than 3 inches of the soil. We're having to use different, various types of low ground pressure equipment, which for the most part a skid steer is. But also put down matting for, larger pieces of equipment to be able to pop a, 72-inch stump, which we oftentimes ran into. Savannah was roughly the same way. Historic headstones from 1500s that we were having to do with. So it really was a very, very interesting process to go through, and really recommend you take a close look at, what would those historical sites be in your own communities and parks.
Thank you, Indiana Dix, for giving us the historical review there. No, really and truly, I think it's really important. Make sure you engage your parks and recreational staff because there is so much debris that could be generated. You look at some of these areas along the coast and older parts of Galveston, Peoria County. I know that there may be a person who's listening who likes to call them the Hysterical Society, or the Historical Society rather, but it is really important. FEMA takes it seriously. Obviously, those who are involved in this from a historical preservation perspective take it very seriously as well. Private property debris removal programs. I think, again, in those situations where you do have a really, really bad disaster in those communities, those individuals can't get that debris to the right-of-way. This is an important option. There is a standard of care or a hurdle that you have to meet as far as your responsibility and how big is big and how bad is bad. But it's certainly overcomable and something that you may need. I will tell you though, getting back to volunteer organizations, with them coming out in full force, you don't see as much as a need as you did previously.
We're going to talk a little bit about this when we get to our case studies on Dougherty County and Albany, Georgia, after a tornado. But this is a picture of one, piece of private property. But as we talked about earlier, it's gated communities and it's mobile home parks. And there were 4 mobile home parks that were destroyed in the Dougherty County tornadoes. And when you have a tornado, you have a flood where you've got like an isolated incident, you've got to make this case to Washington, D.C. that you need this private property debris program. And so making sure that you get the documentation and the photos and you get residents to come out and tell that story, because this is a special program that you've got to get authorization for. So during a hurricane widespread event, it's pretty obvious. But on some of these more isolated incidents, you've got to really show the devastation. So.
Excellent. Thank you. We got a couple more points to hit before we're going to take a quick 15-minute break. But final disposal, making sure that it's sent to a permitted facility or a facility that is acceptable to receive the waste or the debris is an important point. The invoicing process, the contractor invoicing, that does take time, especially when you have private property and when you have these gated communities and having to separate invoices and all this other mumbo jumbo, that the nickels and dimes really add up to the dollars and quarters really, really quickly, and making sure that you have your finance department, your auditor's office, all involved there.
We're going to talk a little bit about technology in one of our later segments of the program, but the game is changing when it comes to technology, and it's making this invoicing piece easier. So we'll talk a little bit about some of the things.
What's not easier is the closeout process. I was having some conversations with some individuals last night about the 2015 disaster that was here, the Memorial Day 2015 disaster, and how that is still not closed out completely. And that was a relatively, easy debris issue, easy disaster, and it just hasn't been there. But the state and FEMA are your partners, and they are working together on this. And it's important to, I think one year we had a workshop that was stamina and resolve and debris management, and again, remembering it's a marathon, not a sprint. So with that, we have hit the 8 on the official H-GAC clock on the back of the wall. We're going to get back to debris management planning. We're going to get back at the 11, so at 9:55, we're going to take about, let's make a 10-minute break. Get back at 9:50. So we'll have 2 10-minute breaks. So we have tacos and coffee, water, fruit, bagels for those of you who are here. For those of you who are not, too bad, so sad. And we're going to go on mute here and be back in about 10 minutes. Hello? Hello? Okay. We get started in just a minute or two. You can get into debris mode. And I know that there's going to be folks trickling in, but got some breakfast tacos and coffee, water. Are we going to have cookies, Aaron, later? Might have cookies, so stick around. I'm going to just wait for her because I don't know if something needs to happen. All right, let me check something. Okay. All right, so we're going to get into debris management planning. We've had the opportunity to work with several local you guys on this, as well as some debris plans around the country. And Karen has been the lead planner on a lot of these. I've had the pleasure of working with her, and she keeps the planning process moving, which honestly, that is the hardest part of the plan. Just keeping it moving, getting to a goal, and meeting that goal. So, Karen, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right. So FEMA does have a program right now. It's a pilot program. There's a cost incentive that's associated with having an approved debris management plan for your jurisdiction. So you can increase the federal cost share by 2% for debris operations if you have a pre-approved plan. And so they have a document out there, part of PAPA-G, that explains all the requirements that FEMA is looking for in their debris management plan. And an approved debris management plan. This pilot program was big in the 08, 09 era. It kind of dropped off a little bit, and then after the Sandy Recovery Improvement Act, this cost incentive resurfaced, and so we have a lot of communities that are dusting off their old plan and or developing a plan for the first time. So for those of you that have one, you might want to take a look at it, update it, make sure that it meets the requirements of this PAPA-G debris management planning job aid. There's a crosswalk in there. There's really not a whole lot of changes from when they came up with this pilot program, I don't know, about 10 years ago. So, you know, if you had a previously approved plan, you might want to take a look at it. I believe once it's approved, it's approved. You don't have to keep resubmitting it for renewal and things like that, but it's
That's
always
correct. Yeah, under the current plan, under the current guidance, which has been renewed through next year, that is correct. Yeah.
You're going to get most of your revisions from the state. Oh, go ahead. Right. It is a one-time cost incentive.
For the first 90 days, you get an additional 2%. That is correct. Yes.
Where you're going to, the way that the process works is that you develop your plan, you submit it to the state, and then the state reviews it. They provide you comments back, and then FEMA takes the approach that once the state's approved it, they know what the requirements are. For them, it's just kind of a pass. So most of the time, once the state has approved your plan, you've gone through their revisions. You know, they're gonna move it through for approval. So.
And and honestly, it's pretty easy to get to work with the state. It's not like dealing with those hazard mitigation plan reviewers. No, I'm just kidding, Jeff. But no, he used to be one. And that's a pain in the neck process. Sorry, we were talking about it earlier. But yeah, it's really easy. Valerie Earhart, Tony Furr, those are the guys. They've been in debris removal operations. They're the reviewers. They're doing this, and that is pretty collaborative process. Sorry to pick on you, Jeff, there.
Yeah, it's less extensive than the hazard mitigation planning process, but there are some requirements. So these are I think it's 10 or 12 critical items that FEMA is looking for in your debris management plan. This is also a really great opportunity to address things that might not be in their list, but are just as important, like historical sites, your things that are specific to your jurisdiction, your private property, your mobile home parks, your gated communities, those kinds of things, taking a look at that, even though it's not specifically, private property debris removal is listed in here, but you know, taking a look at some of those things with a close eye so that you think about it beforehand. So a couple of these things on here, looking for a debris management overview. Really, this is, they want to see that there was some sort of planning process that was implemented to develop the plan. So a planning team with a sign-in sheet and a couple of planning meetings, you know, having that documentation in there to say, yep, we met with this group. We had representation from Public Works, Emergency Management, Fire, Sheriff's Office, you know, whatever your planning team is, I want to see that. For the events and assumptions piece, this is where you look at, maybe you pull out your hazard mitigation plan. That's how I've been doing it in a lot of communities. Figuring out what hazards you're most vulnerable to, which ones are going to generate debris, and then you come up with your events and assumptions for that. So that your debris management plan ties to your existing plans. And so it all tells one nice story. So you can reference your hazard mitigation plan in your debris management plan. That looks nice too from a reviewer standpoint to say, yeah, there was a lot of collaboration on this. So, you know, look at your hazard mitigation plan. Somebody already spent a whole lot of time and effort looking at those hazards and categorizing them and describing them. So all you have to do is just take what's already been written and put it in your events and assumptions. And then look at, so we have these types of disasters. We're vulnerable to floods. We're vulnerable to tornadoes. We're vulnerable to hurricanes. What kind of debris will be generated from those types of incidents? Because flooding is going to be a little bit different than, you know, like a wind event is going to be a little bit different than a water event, things like that. We've also done some debris estimation models on fire recently, wildland fires and things like that. So, because you have a different type of debris stream, you've got a different type of handling process for ash and things like that than you do for wind events, hurricanes. So that's where your events and assumptions are. Your debris collection and removal plan, so how you're going to conduct right-of-way removal, who's going to be involved, you know, the roles and responsibilities there. It's just basically outlining, you know, how you're going to pick up all these sticks and move them to a temporary debris management site and all that kind of stuff. They really do want to see that you've identified temporary debris management sites in your plan. So, you know, again, it's a good idea to work with TCEQ to identify and look at those sites ahead of time. Post-disaster, you might not use those sites. You might use a parking lot of a Walmart that's not open anymore. You know, you may use something completely different, but to meet the requirements of the plan, they want to see that you've taken a look at something, you know, some debris management sites that meet some certain criteria. So ingress, egress, you know, space, capacity to handle large volumes of debris, trucks, not near residential neighborhoods and churches and schools and things like that. Kind of, you know, a place where you can move trucks in and out pretty fast. You don't really need to do soil sampling or water sampling now. That's something you can do at the time of the disaster, but just, you know, certain criteria that the debris management sites meet. And again, you can use sites that are already approved to handle waste, so transfer stations, things like that, if it makes sense for your community where they're geographically located. FEMA wants you to address private property debris removal. So looking at your nuisance and abatement regulations, if you have any programs in place to deal with debris or blighted properties or anything like that. So having that in place. There's also some regulations in the PAPA-G that explains how to, you know, conduct private property debris removal and what the authorizations there are. I've seen some communities come up with, you know, based on their building and safety codes or their building and safety assessment, they'll come up with a checklist of who goes out there, what they're looking for, the notification process to the owner, that kind of thing. So there's some tools out there to help you with that checklist. Use and procurement of contracted services. So we hit on this quite a bit today. I won't, you know, keep going into it. I know that we've got a couple of contracting guides and checklists that we use, but you know, making sure that your procurement and your contract meet the 2 CFR 200 super circular. So.
And one thing I'll mention as a resource, I'll just hop in here real quick. The PDAT, okay, Procurement Disaster Assistance Team. They got a website now, all right, and it has all these resources, Q&A, sample contract language. I mean, you can Google it. I would Google FEMA PDAT, and it's a whole big page on what you should do, and it has a checklist for you to follow. So what I do is I take it to a client. It was revised in November 2016, so it's less than 9 months old, and it just says, hey, this is what the standards are. Does my procurement and did my process meet those standards? And I just sit there and I write it in the margin. Yes, we meet this. This is how we do it. I mean, I did that for a community up in South Carolina after Hurricane Matthew, and that's what I do. It's a checklist. It's on there. Very easy to find. Really simple page. It's not like navigating, through really complex. But yeah, I definitely think that is that's one of my top 3 takeaways for today. Procurement. I think that is a real important point.
Also in the plan, they want to know how you're going to use internal resources, how you're going to use internal staff and internal equipment, and how that's going to be documented. Because when you use your own staff and resources for debris operations, you can get reimbursement up to 100% of straight time and overtime, correct? Or it can go towards your cost share for both straight time and overtime.
No, you can, and I'll tell you, this force account labor stuff is turning into another big pain in the neck too, because I mean, really, that standard has increased dramatically as well, from the timesheet to tying it back to equipment logs. It is really a challenge. I mean, it's almost like they don't want to get reimbursed for the cost that you. Sorry, I didn't say that. And now they're questioning the reimbursement for normal time. Yes. On the clock, yes. Yep. And so now you're having to prove, hey, they were doing debris stuff. They were doing debris removal, and it's an eligible expense. And, I've been in certain situations. I was working with this one client, I can't remember where, but when the project first started out, it was like Spanish Inquisition. Like, there was like, aha, I got you. I mean, you guys are trying to game the system and all this other stuff. It was a real, like, adversarial mentality. And now, like, a year later, working with the FEMA partners, and now they're saying, oh, we can find you money, and now we're going to help redocument these costs. And it got flipped on its head, and so you don't know which way to turn, because you think you got to button everything up, and you only want to reimburse for costs that you can prove, which is the way you should do it anyway. And sorry to get on a little bit of a soapbox moment, but the force account labor stuff is a big challenge.
I recently saw this after Hurricane, I call it Hermione, but it's Hermine in Florida. We had a couple of communities that were trying to use FEMA's forms for documenting time and equipment and all this stuff, when they already have a system in place through their public works resource request system, or like a ticket system that documented everything that they needed to document, and then they had this other piece of paper on top of it, and sometimes they conflicted and they were running into issues there. So if you have internal systems that will document your time and your equipment and location, you already have that, and it's just something that needs to be extracted in a way that you can show it to FEMA. I mean, I would, based on what happened in Hermine, it's better to use the systems that you already have in place, as long as it meets the documentation requirements.
Does anybody know what a remuneration statement is? Anybody? A paycheck? It is. It's a paycheck. Yes. I never heard the term I thought it was remuneration, but it's not. It's remuneration, and it's a paycheck. It's a fancy word for it. But it's something that can be run out of your Kronos or your SAP or whatever it is. Now, that was that's turned out to be a requirement to provide that. And that was a new one for me because usually you needed an audit, but now they want to see it at the beginning. So, but I think what is important that Karen said from a planning perspective is making sure that that force account labor, your tracking mechanism is reviewed and you take a look at that.
We talked a little bit about monitoring debris operations. So, you know, especially with this historic review process and environmental procedures and all that kind of stuff, and plus just the typical right-of-way collection monitoring, they want to see a section in there about exactly how you're going to monitor contractors and things like that.
And also any bugs and bunnies monitoring as well. And bugs and bunnies meaning
endangered species.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, I affectionately call them that. Those type of people. We have a lot of those bugs and bunnies people in Tetra Tech. That they call themselves the bugs and bunnies people. But if you do have, you know, Kemp's Ridley sea turtles or piping plovers or nesting seasons or anything along those lines, that is a part of ospreys, nesting, bald eagles, any of that. That is an important point of the monitoring requirements that you don't think of. So everybody thinks just debris monitoring, load tickets, but there is historical and environmental monitoring that may be involved in that.
Another big piece of this is the health and safety requirements. I know for us as contractors, we've got to have a pretty robust health and safety plan in place. You should also have it in place for your force account staff and things like that. So looking at your HR policies and whatever health and safety programs you have in place, and then tailoring it for debris operations. So, and sometimes it's project by project. So if you've got a waterways project, you're going to have a health and safety plan that's specific to waterways and water moccasins and all those kinds of things that are in there.
Yeah, I'm going to stop on health and safety for a minute because it is so important. We're having a little pre-hurricane season meeting, you know, the day after hurricane season started tomorrow, that Karen and I are going to be attending. We're our own internal working group type thing. And health and safety is a big part of this. We're going to have 3 health and safety officers there to talk to us about that. And it is really, really important. And to talk to your contractors, to talk to your health and safety officer, to get health and safety plans, to take a look at them, to make sure they're site specific. I was working in that Myrtle Beach area, Horry County, up in South Carolina. We were doing a waterways project, and it was, you know, rattlesnakes were everywhere, and making sure we had, you know, special provisions, and taking the appropriate, getting the, you know, the snake boots and all that stuff. That's a big piece of this. So beyond just, hey, general health and safety, there's some unique, and I'm sure I'm not saying the term right, but hazard specific annexes or that are considerations that are included in there.
Yeah, absolutely. Along those lines, environmental considerations and other regulatory requirements. The other regulatory requirements is like anything under the sun. So making sure that your plan lists your local, state, and federal environmental regulations and how your debris operations are going to align with those kinds of things. Some of the other, recently, another big piece of the plan that we've been including or you know, just expanding is, you know, addressing debris operations that might adversely impact individuals with disabilities and access and functional needs. So when debris is piled up on the right-of-way, it blocks access to critical facilities for people with like mobility issues and things like that. So making sure there's a plan in place to allow people that need access to sidewalks and bus stops and healthcare facilities and all those kinds of things still have access to that, because you can run into, you know, not only is it a lot of times these vulnerable populations are more adversely impacted by a disaster. You don't want your debris operations to be, you know, impeding their capability of moving around and getting to the things that they need to get to. So when we say other regulatory requirements, this is a piece of the plan that we've been really, you know, getting a lot of input on from different communities, so that you can really address that issue.
It was 2 years ago, I think, we actually had a workshop dedicated to debris and how to make considerations for people with functional and access needs. Had a great speaker, a guy from the city of Houston. He was visually impaired. ended up passing away recently, I think. I mean, great guy, great speaker. I don't know if there's a new person in that position. Oh, there is. Okay. He was a dynamite resource. And if you are interested in more of this topic, the presentations are online. If you want to go back a couple of years, flip through some of those slides, look at some of the additional supplemental documents, rather, that they're online as well. So just to hit on that, there is some more information out there for you to take a look at.
And then the last thing they want to see in here is a public information piece. You know, again, people are absorbing information in a totally different way than they used to. They want small snippets of information, very visual. They want it quick and fast. So working with your, public relations and things like that to give instructions to the public. So one, they don't cut an arm off while they're trying to move their debris around or get electrocuted by down lines. But also giving them instructions on how to do their set-out procedures. So just some public information. There needs to be a little bit of a public information piece in here as well.
Real quick, I thought I was super big time this past year. I was at a open house there in Southwest Georgia. It was a community forum. Had about 50 or 60 people, a lot on debris management. But there were the two people in the front row, and the whole time they had their cell phones out, just put, like this, and they were streaming live Facebook Live. Yeah. The debris presentation.
Big time.
Yeah, I was, everywhere. And then even the ABC affiliate, not only did she have her camera set up, but then she had another camera with with her cell phone set up, and she was live streaming that too. So public information, just even that stuff, I think I've never been live streamed before, so I thought that was pretty cool. But just something to take.
You're going to want a PR person after this now.
What's that?
You're going to want a PR person.
I know, exactly. Anyway, but public information, just the tweets and the Snap Buddy and whatever else we have. I'm just kidding. Snapchat, Facebook, and even the Facebook Live are some new things. Yes, thank you. Hold on one second.
Is FEMA looking for public input also on these debris management plans or hazard mitigation plans?
On the hazard mitigation plan, yes, you do have very scheduled, structured public input. On your debris management plan, there's no requirement to present this to the public. And honestly, you're talking about critical infrastructure, you're talking about priority roads and things like that. You can certainly make the argument that this is a protected document that you don't want to distribute out to the public. So especially when you're talking about your priority roads to critical infrastructure and things like that. So these are typically protected documents, so you don't have to publicly disclose like you do the hazard mitigation plan.
Yeah, so, but I think, Peggy, to your point, after disasters, there's a real key public information, public input element to it.
Absolutely. We'll talk more about public information in workshop 2.
We are, yeah.
Yeah, and we're going to talk a lot about, pushing information, but you can also pull a lot of information from the public using Twitter, using Facebook, using all this stuff. So you can see where your hotspots are, or if there's zero communication whatsoever, there's probably an issue there as well. So we're going to talk more about that in workshop 2. I'm going to go through this pretty quickly because we've kind of already talked about a lot of this, but debris planning team, think about who you want to spend a couple of months, once a month going through all this. But some key players, obviously Public Works, Solid Waste, Emergency Management, Parks has got a big role in this. GIS, everything's getting so technology focused. If you can get your GIS people in to help you with maps and to overlay different, even your vulnerable communities and things like that, floodplain, all that. Getting them involved. Finance and administration, a lot of this comes down to procurement of contracted resources and things like that. So making sure that they are looking through the plan. Legal counsel, your contracted service providers, whoever does your public relations, working with your environmental groups, and then also at the state. So this can be a pretty robust team, just depending on who you've got involved. And again, if you are a county and you're going to be providing services to your cities, we do work with a lot of counties that have contract cities. So they provide service to they provide day-to-day service for municipal collection and things like that. If you're going to be supporting them during debris operations, if you've got a mutual aid agreement with them or anything like that, or you're going to allow them to use your temporary debris management sites, making sure that they're part of the plan too, so they know what's going on. Components of the plan, you know, we talked about this quite a bit already. Just some of the things that FEMA is going to look for, but also they don't outline this specifically in their crosswalk of things that they look for, but the roles and responsibilities section of any plan is really important because it's going to tell everybody who's doing what. And that's again why you need your whole team there to do this planning process, is because you don't want to assign something to somebody that they're not going to be able to do, but then you also want to make sure that people are involved in the actual response operation. So, and then outlining your training and exercise program. We've been doing a lot of tabletop exercises with debris operations lately as part of the plan. So we put the plan together, kind of the boring part of preparedness. And then at the end, you do this tabletop exercise where you demo an actual disaster. And you sit around, you look at your maps, and you figure out where all your debris management sites are, and you figure out where your vulnerable areas are and things like that. And then you go through some discussion of, you know, what if we did have a tornado, or what if we did have a flood in this area? And you just don't have to imagine that too much, and you get a lot of disasters here. So
I got to ask a question on training and exercise, because this is something that's on my mind. I don't know if it's on your mind, but I know we got emergency management. We have different road and bridge, and training and exercise, the exercise piece of this. And, you know, what are some ideas, or what are some things that you've seen from an exercise? Like, is it part of a big exercise, like big hurricane, you know, Diablo or whatever it is, or is it debris specific? Is it with county? I mean, what are some scenarios? I mean, could you just talk a little bit about that?
So, you know, everybody does this a little bit differently, and typically in emergency management preparedness, we say you should always do sort of a tiered approach. You should start out basic with a workshop or a tabletop exercise, and then graduate to more extensive exercises. So activating your EOC or your department operations center, you know, if you're police and fire, moving apparatus and things like that. So it starts out kind of basic with a tabletop exercise and moves its way up. With debris, it's hard to do a full-scale exercise with debris where you're actually like moving trucks around. You probably wouldn't do that, but you could absolutely, you know, start out with a tabletop exercise and then you know, activate your department operations center once a year just to make sure everybody knows what they're supposed to be doing, that your technology works the way that you want to, that whatever technology you're using in your public works department operations center is feeding up to your county EOC or your city EOC, so making sure all of that aligns. So, you know, there's a couple of different ways that you can go through the training and exercise. There's some online training that FEMA has that kind of goes through the basics of Debris 101 and things like that.
IA 632 is the independent study 632. H-GAC has a lot of different courses that we've done in the past. They're all online, I think, or there's PowerPoint. All of our workshops, yes. And we're recording this one as well. So hopefully I don't say anything too bad, which I probably already have. Anyway, but there's more workshops online if you want to. We've gotten into various topics from, again, special needs, public communication, appeals, the whole 9 yards. So if you want to see out some ideas, you can.
If you want to do a debris exercise, but you're maybe not so sure how to go about it, work with your emergency management. They do tons of training on FEMA's program for developing and conducting exercises. So if they have an annual hurricane exercise every year, they might add a component of it that just focuses on debris. So you can kind of marry two things. That we do that a lot. Florida, we do a statewide annual hurricane exercise every year, and the counties and cities use that. They have to do it. It's mandated to participate in it. So if they're going to be activating their EOC, they customize the scenario for whatever they want to exercise. And sometimes it's a debris mission. those kinds of things. So you can get creative. You know, we talked quite a bit about this, identifying your priority roads in your plan, debris management site locations. A lot of communities will establish zones, you know, either based on already established zones, or they come up with their own debris zones so that you can organize your operations. Final disposal plan. You know, widespread disaster, everybody's going to be wanting the same exact resources. So I was just at an exercise a couple of weeks ago where it wasn't debris related, it was emergency evacuation exercise. And everybody had listed on there the same exact resource to move people out of the city. It was Atlanta. Everybody was going to use MARTA. And then they all realized, well, I'm using MARTA and you're using MARTA and everybody's using MARTA, and MARTA is not operational because they were impacted by the disaster, you know. So those kinds of things, looking to make sure that if you've got a disposal site and everybody else in the community or in the surrounding areas using that as well, you know, figuring out what your plan B is going to be. You know, it should be operational, your plan should be operational. So it's got this concept of operations, what you do, like response, recovery, long-term recovery. It should have all that, you know, chronologically in there, but then also provide some job aids and checklists for field operations so that you really have an understanding of you can give this to somebody and they're like, okay, I got it. I know exactly how to do this, or I kind of know how to do it, but I've got enough of a quick reference guide to get me through the first couple of days. And then again, having that training and exercise schedule in there to keep the plan alive and keep updating and making sure that people know that it exists. I do a lot of planning, like not just debris management planning, but continuity planning, recovery planning, all kinds of planning. And a lot of times I know more about a community's recovery or their response than they do. And that's not the way that it should be. It really should be, you put this plan together and you circulate it to the people that it needs to go to so that everybody is on the same sheet of music. And that's part of that training and exercising piece. The benefits of a debris management plan, DDMPs are easy to demonstrate the benefits because there is this one-time 2% cost share increase. So there's dollars associated with this if you have this approved debris management plan. But operationally, it just puts you in a better position to respond, and you just have a better shot at getting your documentation right from the start if you've thought about it ahead of time. It reduces your risk of making mistakes if you've thought about this, you know, a lot of these things ahead of time. Oh.
We're going to skip the break, and actually now we're going to get into some of the changes. And so I'm really excited about this part of it because we've got some top stories, some stuff in the news, some changes, the new delivery model with FEMA technology and how those things have changed debris management. And so, Karen, you want to talk about what's been in the news?
So I just took a quick snapshot of some of the top stories in hurricane news a couple of days ago. And NOAA is, I feel like we see this every hurricane season. It's going to be more active than usual. But again, I think there's a little bit of science behind this with this El Nino kind of peak and weakened system, I guess. We may see a more active season this year. Who knows if any of these things will make landfall. But NOAA and some of the other experts in the scientific community are saying get prepared. So there was some chatter about a correlation between the Spurs going to the playoffs and disaster. So
what is it? Spurs lose, Houston wins. Is
yeah,
that the?
That's kind of what
that's it in a nutshell, which I'm okay with.
So there's some evidence that shows. I think it's a very weak correlation between Spurs championship and landfall in Texas. So you know, there's some other science out there that says that, you know, rising sea levels and warmer temperatures are creating a stronger season. And then also we've had a little bit of a calm. So, you know, it's the calm before the storm. So there's all kinds of theories out there, but really it just reinforces the need to be prepared and ready for the potential landfall. So These are some of the disasters so far this year. I mean, this is just 2017. Severe storms, severe tornadoes, straight line winds, flooding, mudslides, landslides, fires. This is going to, May, and we already have quite a few declared disasters.
We're setting a record, actually. We set a record for the first quarter of 2017 as far as number of declared disasters, actually. And that's something that we're going to be hopefully talking about in the third chapter or third workshop, is some of the changes in the that may be forthcoming in the declaration process. I don't know if y'all have seen some of the what they're calling the disaster deductible policy or the disaster deductible program. I'm not a huge fan of like foreshadowing, but there is a public comment period that's out right now, and they are talking about really changing the disaster declaration process as we know it. So it's important to be aware of that.
And the reason being, this is difficult to keep up with, right? I mean, FEMA's having a hard time responding to all of these disasters and the staffing that goes along with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's 80 to 100 disasters a year, and really, like, probably I've seen some that are, and this is just my tummy rub on this thing too, and I got one to rub, so I will. And we're talking about 8 or 9 that are like truly big, over $100 million, like where I think, and again, this is just John's editorial here, but where I think FEMA needs to be a part of that response. Right now, they're at 100 a year, 85, 100 since I think really President George W. Bush on through President Obama and into President Trump, that you're seeing that kind of average at that high level. And I think they want to reduce that, reduce the number of federal disasters, increase the responsibility of states and local governments to be more accountable and for these disasters. So a lot there. You went into even Hurricane Matthew, where again, you have 5 states were impacted by that. Here in Texas, we had a lot of disasters from May of 2015 through May of 2016. We had 6 declared disasters, actually June 2016, but it was started in May. Unprecedented number of disasters, everything from tornadoes to floods to more floods and another flood and another one. So there was a lot in Southeast Texas area, Houston area, Houston-Galveston area has been impacted by 3 of those, or actually 4 of those disasters in that same 12-month period. A lot of you in this room part of that.
Did Texas have any fires this year?
No, I think the rain really helped that out. But no, I don't. We're lucky. No wildfires this year. I think the KBI. I mean, we got into some drought conditions in a few areas, but no wildfires this year.
That was a huge issue in Florida that we're typically not used to. I mean, it comes every like 10 or 15 years. We get this fire situation, but it's the debris from that is a totally different process. So, just curious about that.
So what FEMA is doing right now is called a new delivery model, new public assistance delivery model. All right. So the same. So what FEMA did is actually it's called FEMA re-engineering. They're trying to re-engineer the new program, evolve it over. It hasn't really changed all that much since its first program inception. And what they're trying to address is some of the common criticisms of the program. Staff turnover. Oh my God, we've had 7 FEMA people over the last year. Why don't we just have 1 FEMA person? The documentation requirements. They keep losing my documentation. I've had to send them the same jump drive 4 times. That may just be, I don't think it is though, that there is, that this is a process that will hopefully streamline it and make FEMA great again. I think is what we're all trying to do, folks. So, so what they're really stepping it, and I don't know, Karen, if you have the little clicky thing.
Sorry, I was mesmerized by the cookies back there. So.
But this is a three-step process. First started in Iowa with a test bed, then moved into Oregon as well. Next, it went to Georgia following Hurricane Matthew, and then the state of Georgia liked it so much that they decided to implement it on 2 other disasters in Georgia in January of 2017. Now, stage 3, it's in 2017. We're going to involve testing at more than 1 location. So, I think the goal is to be fully integrated into this new delivery model by 2018 or 2019. So, hopefully this. I mean, and I got my fingers crossed, guys. I for one have been working in this. It's, you know, why I don't have any hair and working it for too long, and I want to see these changes being made. I think there are people at the top who are making some good decisions within the organization, and this new delivery model will be beneficial. This is the process. You have what they're calling a program delivery manager, a PDGM, program delivery grants manager. So they are your liaison. They are your what's the guy at the hotel?
Concierge.
Concierge at the Ritz. You need a site inspector. We'll get you a site inspector. You need an engineer. I'll have one by 3 o'clock. These people are supposed to be with you from the beginning of the project all the way through the exit briefing at the end of the project. So you're going to get to know this concierge, this program delivery coordinator, very, very well. Their biggest attribute, FEMA will, they assign, different weighting as far as what this person needs to look like, as far as their knowledge, skills, abilities. Customer service is the number 1 attribute. They want somebody customer service oriented. They don't need to know the program. They don't need to know the eligibility of, a 14, millimeter hanger up in the tree, overlooking a bluff. Whether that's eligible, I don't care about that either, to be honest with you. I just want somebody that's nice, I want somebody that's nice to me and not gonna, double batter and fry me up when something doesn't go right. And so that's what they're gonna do there. They have an exploratory call where they just call you up on the phone saying, "Hey, I'm John. I'm your program delivery manager. Let's talk about your situation, what your damages are," and then we do that. Then we're going to have a recovery scoping meeting where we're going to sit down and we're going to collaboratively come up with your list of everything that happened to you. And I know you have 60 days to put this together, but this recovery scoping meeting is much like your kickoff meeting. But they want to make it collaborative and talk through your priorities. They're going to eliminate the site inspections for work completed. So if you have completed, so you replaced that culvert, or you've addressed the shoaling in one of your channels, or you removed the debris, they don't want to do site inspections. They want to do site inspections for work to be completed. So that's why it says, if necessary, get your damage description and dimensions, your GC, get your scope of work, go get your cost estimate, and then final review and sign off. There are 3 separate steps in the process where you as the sub-grantee are going to be able to sign off on this program before you receive funding. So that's how it's working. There's also something, if you go to the next slide here. You go back. They have what they're calling a CRC, a Consolidated Resource Center. So, so that cat on the ground, the program delivery coordinator, he's not taking any of your documentation. All right, they have a SharePoint portal. called Grants Manager or Grants Portal. Everybody familiar with SharePoint, FTP, email, that sort of thing? Anyways, it's a cloud-based program where everything gets sent up to the cloud and then actually reviewed by somebody you're never going to meet. You're never going to meet this person. They're going to be located in Denton, Texas. There's going to be a CRC in Winchester, Virginia, Winchester, Virginia, Maryland, something like that. There's one there. And there's going to be one in Pasadena, California. So there's going to be 3 different time zones. The CRCs are going to take, so it's a hub and spoke mentality. I've been hearing about this for a while. I actually implemented it in our particular program a couple of years ago. And, essentially, you've got these 3 nodes, and then you have all these program delivery managers out there getting the information, and then it's being sent up to the cloud, and it's being written, your project worksheets are being written in a remote location, which only makes sense. It's going to reduce your travel costs, it's going to reduce costs, it's going to help have consistency and documentation, and it's going to help with the loss of data. So that program delivery manager really is your concierge. It's going to be your best friend, but they aren't responsible there to have all the answers. So, Ms. Murdo, you have a question here. Hold on, wait.
Are there any active training services? How proactive are they?
Great question. How active are they going to be to have that program delivery manager? Well, there's going to be fewer program delivery managers, so fewer positions like that. So they're trying to reduce the number of positions on the ground there. So that's fewer positions than that. Fine. The skill set that they're looking for is going to be different. So these guys and gals with 20 years of experience who bebop around, the nation, and it was one of those things where you were a jack of all trades. So it's a type of person. So what they're trying to do is find it local. Okay? So they're trying to source this person with 1 to 3 years experience, maybe right out of college, maybe at a grad school, maybe looking at it. Their ideal candidate, I think, is 25 to 35, 40 years old type of person who, again, customer service oriented. So historically, it's been the person that has been assigned to City of Houston. He or she has experience in debris and road and bridge and utilities and all this other stuff. And they're the person on the ground. They're trying to take that away so that you can bring in specialists. So the concierge says, hey, you've got a hospital that has been flooded. Well, I don't expect me as a concierge to know everything there is to know about disasters in hospitals. I should call, my Yoda. I need the Yoda of hospital people. And there's a couple of those, and they're really expensive, but it's worth bringing them in. Does that make sense? So I think they're trying to staff for that. And then FEMA recently reissued their technical assistance contracts. That's what we do tomorrow. Their RFP, but yeah, so it's I think again, as you go through this program, they really are trying to make some changes in a positive direction to increase you as the sub-grantee's youth experience with the program. It's not just be a one, which it has been for a lot of folks. Okay, well, let's take a break.
Yeah.
I think so.
There are cookies in the back.
We are going to take a 15-minute break. We're going to go from 8 to the 11. Okay. Restrooms in the back. Cookies, delicious. No breakfast tacos. Oh no, there are. You missed it. And we'll be back with technology. Get the tricorders out, and we're talking technology and debris management, and then
trivia
and case.
What'd you say?
May 5th.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. For debris operations, let me get John because I don't know that much about levees. And I know for like recovery projects and things like that, he's had more experience. So I'll be right back. Were you in Maine? Oh, I'm on.
Go to the bathroom.
Yeah, I know. good?
What's that? 3 easy steps. Do we need to press the button? I love when I timed out. Oh no. It's blinking white.
I don't know if I can wing it.
Sorry for those on the phone. We're just taking another minute. Luckily, so this is a section on technology and debris management. So we're having the mainly story of my life there. Does anybody have any questions while we're getting that booting up? Anybody have questions of anything we covered so far? Comments? Yes, Peggy. Oh, hold on. You get the mic.
I was just wondering, with the proof that you actually, your people have gone out to do disaster debris, is you might want to think about body cameras and dashboard cameras and stuff like that.
I swear, I think that's where we're going to be going. Everybody's going to have phones, cameras, body cameras. We're going to talk about drones and the UAVs, or unmanned aerial vehicles, and how that's used. I mean, honestly, like that's just. I mean, I think we might be having to get there with, hey, we're going to put, body cameras on our solid waste drivers and our public works staff to prove that we're actually doing the work. I mean, I don't think that's a far-fetched idea at all. I'd say that. Yeah, disaster work versus regular. Yeah, no, I think that is. I'm not discounting anything, just from everything I've seen and what we've been a part of. Oh, hey.
All right.
No, okay. So that's right. All right, Karen, you want to start talking some technology?
I will start talking some technology. So I know just about enough of the automated debris management system to be a little bit dangerous. So feel free to jump in at any point. So this ADMS system, I'm sure a lot of you have already heard about this. It's being implemented on almost every single one of our debris projects right now. And we've gone from this paper ticket system, 2008 and before, to this electronic system. And it has really changed the face of debris management and documentation. So there's this timeline of just the industry sort of evolving with technology. And now, instead of having these paper tickets and Excel spreadsheets, you can see where your operations are in real time. So it's really changed the game quite a bit. And you can capture a lot of really neat information from these different.
Well, if you go back real quick, the key day was like 2009, I think, and that was really the advent of the commercially available smartphones. And now you have a device that you can write code to, and you didn't have to go overseas somewhere, manufacturing devices like, the stuff you see at Hertz, with a bunch of buttons and stuff like that. Now you have stuff you can go to a Verizon store or a Best Buy or what have you, go pick up some devices, load some software on it, and boom, you're in business, which is really where we are today. Now you had technology that has gotten to a point which drives down, costs. You have government who created standards, the Corps of Engineers, and now you have everybody now moving away from paper-based tickets. Now, don't worry. I mean, us and the folks doing the documentation, you know, have a warehouse full of the paper stuff. But now everybody's moved to these handheld devices, and really that technology is the way, you know, things are moving.
Yeah, whereas 5 or 10 years ago everything was paper, we've really evolved into this new system, and it's an industry standard. So as John said, the Army Corps has standards on it. I mean, all of the all of your contractors in the industry have got some sort of system that they're using. But there were some initial challenges with this. Just like John was saying, you know, they sort of started out using these devices that you had to order from overseas and all this kind of stuff, and now we've got apps and smartphones. It's got GPS. It's got a camera. It's got all the capabilities that we need in order to do this. But initially there were some logistical issues and some costs, but the smartphone was really the thing that catapulted this into 2017. So it's more reliable. It's not complex. I think. I don't know how to make an app, but there are tons of 22-year-old people that know how to make apps. So this thing can constantly be evolved to whatever you need it to be. Again, some of the field requirements or design requirements, the Army Corps of Engineers has this list of standards that your major vendors in the field meet these requirements. It's got to perform as fast as paper. I think now it's performing faster than paper.
A lot of cases, yep, absolutely.
So you don't have this 5 carbon sheet paper trail that you've got to keep track of for 5-10 years. All this stuff gets uploaded to the cloud, and it can be available for whenever. It has to be user-friendly, so anybody's got to be able to use it. Specialized training not required. If you know how to use a smartphone, if you know how to call, make a phone call, you should be able to use this thing with a drop-down box and buttons and things like that. Again, it's a work in progress, so it's constantly being evolved to eliminate user error. But now, instead of getting sheets of paper with poor penmanship and who knows where that address was and what was going on there, now it's pre-populated with a lot of data so that user error is more limited.
Advanced Contract Initiative, it's a contract that the Corps of Engineers has, and they had come up with some specs, and they established. That's what really industry built their platforms off of right there.
Now, another piece of this is this cost effectiveness. So, during previous disasters when we were using a paper ticket system, that is really difficult to manage and maintain. It requires a lot of data entry. So where we're not doing this massive data entry effort, we've got more skilled positions doing, just a data management piece of it. So instead of going to a data, keying in time, it's all uploaded in real time. So the cost is, every year it's going down. So, so it's meeting those requirements. Again, we're using smartphone platforms for this type of technology. If there's some with the iPhone, Windows, I know we use an Android and thermal printers. So, these equipment is readily available. So when you ramp up operations, you can access these. It's a phone, it's a smartphone. They're readily available.
And the thermal printers is important because you still want to have a paper ticket, and so you got to have some way to print that. So, Mr. Watson, you have a question here.
So the cost for this service, is it included in most of these contracts, or is that something that's a separate? And how do they price that?
That's a great question. Some cases it's incorporated into the cost of the service. In some cases it's an additional charge based on a per day or per hour basis for users of the actual device. So the folks out in the field are using the device, and they would either have it baked into their rate. There's some sort of mechanism, up to whatever number it is per hour for that user. There's also been some customers who want the system, but then they want to use their own staff, and so they put out solicitations and say, hey, we just want the platform. We just want you to give us the devices, the printers, and the tech support that goes with it. But we're going to put the people out in the field because, as Aaron alluded to, or Karen alluded to, it is very easy. There's only 2 fields that the individual has to input on. So really, that is an option. Is to have a. So there's a couple of different ways to skin the cat. There's different ways to actually, with or without personnel. But that's the compensation mechanism. Does it include the GIS support? Does it include, the other support, up and running and all that?
We had a question in the back.
I just wanted to say the City of Houston purchased the use of an app that somebody designed in order to coordinate volunteer groups that would come around and help people recover from their disaster and stuff like that. So that's another thing that we were talking about earlier, is that there's a lot of volunteer people who are out there doing things, and this app helps coordinate it so you didn't have 12 people coming to one site and all that kind of good stuff.
No, absolutely. I think there's a lot between the 311, the 311 app, the 311 phone call, volunteer apps. I think it's just I think that may be next level type of thing where now we're taking that data, importing it into the free system, trying to either make sure that we have situational awareness, putting it into geo portals, anything like that. I mean, that's the stuff that's out there. Crowdsourcing, in real time. Absolutely, yep. Where they need service and where, those disabled folks who don't have the means to get the debris, there are some things out there for that.
Yeah, definitely. To find those unmet needs and match them with the resources that are available is a lot easier using an app than it is making phone calls or trying to figure it out that way.
So this is the way that the truck certifications, very complex form, simplifying that form through the ADMS system. And go to the next slide there. Now it's very easy, very data-driven, very report-oriented, very linear, so that it takes a lot of the complexity and simplifies it and makes it auditable by FEMA staff.
So I got to go certify trucks in Chambers County in August, a long time ago after Hurricane Ike. And it's hot inside one of these trucks, and it was taking me forever to fill out the form, and it was very complicated, and you had a line of trucks that were coming, and so all that had to happen fast. This makes it so much more of a simple process. So there's certain inputs and outputs for these systems. So the truck certification, again, we had talked about this earlier about how that drives the rest of the process, so that you can capture quantities and things like that. So you get your truck certifications done. The truck gets a barcode number so it can be scanned. There's a monitor there with the truck who is taking GPS coordinates at each pickup site, and then a photo is taken. So now with smartphones, you can capture the GPS, you can capture a photo, and all of that data is collected and uploaded to a cloud. It can be, analyzed and things like that. And at the end of the collection point, the truck, so the truck leaves for the DMS site, and then at the debris management site, there's someone there that will look at all that information, and then he gets a ticket there. So this allows you to track in real time where your truck is going, the capacity that they're hauling, and then all the data is transferred by cell. So, you know, it's minimal data entry, and it's an electronic system, so all of this is captured again in real time. You know, key benefits: the volume of paper is reduced. You can see exactly what's been collected. You know, you get a daily report that's based on actual numbers, and you know, you've got supporting documentation through photos and things like that. For disposal, it's the same process of you know, using the system to track from pickup from haul out to final disposal. You know, again, the key benefits here that you can, this is taking 15 to 30 seconds per truck versus before it was taking a lot longer. You know, in the photos, the photo piece of this, you know, all of this is collected together. So there's no more of marrying paper tickets with photos and all this kind of complicated stuff. It's all put and packaged nicely. Again, it's real-time reporting. You can see where all your trucks are. You can see where all your monitors are. You can have this up in your department operations center so you can see exactly where operations are taking place, your truck and crew locations, and the statistics that go along with it. So, you know, you can see whatever kind of information you want to see with it. You can track your first and second pass. We had talked about that earlier, about making sure, you know, that debris is being collected in each of these zones and how many times you've gone through that community. So you can say to, you know, your elected officials, we've been to your zone, we've collected. These are all the places that we've been to. It's a snapshot rather than getting a paper report that shows a bunch of, you know, addresses. You can show a picture and say, tell your constituents, we've been there, and we've been there twice. So, you know, it helps with that reporting piece. You know, just showing past completion status and things like that. Some of the other stats on your disposal locations. You can populate this with whatever information you want, your temporary debris management sites, your disposal sites. We've had some people ask about interfacing with WebEOC and some of the other technology resources that your emergency operations center uses. So being able to see this, be able to log into the system and put it up on the screens of the EOC, you know, can provide that situational awareness to say, you know, this is where all of this, these operations are taking place. You know, all the green dots are showing where we picked up unit rate. So when John was talking about leaners, hangers, and stumps a little earlier, there's a lot of requirements that go along with leaning hazardous hanging stumps, or excuse me, hazardous hanging limbs and hazardous stumps. They've got to have measurements. They've got to have pictures associated with it. It's got to have a GPS location. All that can get really complicated when you're talking about paper tickets and photos. This makes it so much easier to see the complete picture for each ticket.
So I'm going to hop in here real quick because I think what you're seeing here is that these systems, I think summarize it by saying you get just a ton more visibility than you did 5-10 years ago. Okay, you can see things happen in real time, where people are, where trucks are, all these dots. And you know what? That's dangerous. Part of this, I mean, like, this is the part where I'm like, hey, we got all this information, but, you know, not to sound like, you know, it's going to fall into the hands of the evil empire or something like that. But I mean, you know, sometimes it falls into the hands of the wrong elected official, and that's like that. And then, you know, and then you're making decisions about how much do we put out to the public? How much do we push out to the public? That's a big question. Hey, do we show trucks in this zone? Do we show your street cleared? Because you know what, Miss Johnson, who lives at 12345 on you know, South Cherry Street, she put her, we called it clear and we called the first pass complete, but you know what, she didn't have the volunteer group come in there until the day after, and so Miss Johnson just flips her lid when she sees that they've cleared my street, and she doesn't understand that they're going to come back. So that's what I that's a real life scenario right there because that's happened. And so that's something to be important. I mean, that's something to be aware of. The second thing is, I think whether or not you document this yourself, you use any third party, whatever it is, I mean, this is the way it's going, guys. I mean, you know, to eliminate the paper, boxes and boxes of that stuff, I mean, it makes sense. Digitizing everything. There's service providers out there, plenty of them. Just do some research and you can find. And they have varying degrees of reporting, varying degrees of complexity. All the user interface is all about the same. I mean, that's pretty much a bar that's been set here by the 8, core specs. But all the back-end stuff is really where you see the difference. But honestly, I mean, it's a really powerful tool that can really enhance your debris operation. And then, the final thing is on the FEMA side, because we have had experiences where a dot is off. Like these smartphones, anybody know how accurate they are GPS-wise? How many? 9? I'm sorry, I didn't hear it. No. 9 meters. Okay, that's 18 feet. Yeah, 18 feet. That's about, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's 9 to 21 feet or something like that. About 9 meters. And so you got somebody who may be in somebody's front yard, and there might be a couple of big pine trees that block the 27 feet. That block the horizon, so you don't get the best signal, and then that dot goes over into somebody else's yard, and that and a FEMA auditor, their head almost explodes. They're like, "Oh my God, dot's in the wrong place," and that's happened because I've been in those meetings, and you just have to talk to them about that. But I mean, again, that's the only thing to say. This is not like weapons grade. We're not going to drop a Scud missile using the GPS coordinate of this thing right here. It is a commercial off-the-shelf device with just regular run-of-the-mill, Big Brother GPS following. So I'm sorry, I just had to interject there because I think in my mind, I'm looking at all this stuff going, holy cats, this is a lot of information that these systems can provide, and I want to be careful with them.
Right, yeah. Going back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier with the, interfacing with groups that are keeping track of, 211 calls or damage reports and those kinds of things, or people with unmet needs. You can use some of these systems to overlay in that aspect too. Missed debris piles, these things can do whatever you want them to do. And again, how much information do you want to kind of put out there to your, elected officials and then to the public?
With City of Houston HCDD, we were looking at the impacts of the 2016 disaster and looking at unmet needs and doing an analysis, working with that team there. And so we were looking at different data sets, and one of the things that we realized, we used the debris data set. So the debris pickup locations was one of our layers. So we did individual assistance calls, we did 211 or 311 calls, we did different layers, and all of them, I mean, you could see the clusters. You could see the clusters of people in need, and you just did the debris layer. But what was interesting is that there were some areas within the city of Houston that had really heavy debris, and then they didn't have any individual assistance reports. They had no 311. If you didn't know the debris was there, you wouldn't think that they flooded. And those were in lower socioeconomic areas, low to moderate income areas. And in talking to some of the council members, there was in that particular community is a very tight-knit community, and they don't report. They don't rely on government. They didn't want to report. There's either distrust or there's whatever the case may be. But that's something that when you do look at long-term recovery and long-term impact, that your debris GPS coordinates of all these debris piles, that'll help tell that second layer of the story And that was a real interesting aspect of it that wasn't immediately known, that we had, areas of, like acres of homes that didn't have any individual assistance plans, but had a whole heck of a lot of debris that was generated in that area.
Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about that with Dougherty County when we get into the case studies too. Same thing, using this sort of layer cake method to show where the disaster damage is, so you can make that, you can tell that story. And the debris seems to be, because of this ADMS system, it's the easiest way to show where the damage is.
That's right. Yep. You can absolutely show in real time, hey, where those pockets are. Probably better than SBA and IA. Sorry to use all the acronyms. Individual assistance and small business administration assistance. And that information, I got to tell you, is a pain in the you-know-what to get. And getting address level, you got to kind of, sign non-disclosures and blah, blah, blah. Really tough. Debris data is something that you're going to have. So.
Another capability with the ADMS system is just to show ownership of your road segment. So during your initial first few days, you'll marry up your GIS folks with whoever's operating your ADMS so that they can get GIS layers on your road lists and things like that, so that they can populate these dashboards, I guess. Just different reports, in progress reports that you can put together using these systems. Again, showing these pictures of, the truck, the trees, the measurements, and the photos before and after. I mean, all this. You click on one of these little ticket numbers and you get this picture. This is a lot easier than sifting through a box.
No, you gotta. People want to see pictures of everything. We're taking pictures of debris loads now. Like once it goes to the tower, you got to take a picture of it. I mean, it's like that workout. If you don't have a picture of it, it didn't happen. So just like that debris truck, that if that load didn't have a picture tied to it, or that tree limb didn't have a picture, that didn't happen. So just something. I mean, that's really where we're going. I mean, we're all
back to the body cam of
the body cam. I know. I'm sitting there. I'm like, that's a good idea. I need to look into that.
Recorded so that we can prove we were here. But yeah, so and then you can do different analysis. You can give this to your different groups to run different analysis on this. And post-disaster, when you're trying to, again, when you've got smaller incidents where it's not a widespread disaster and you've got to show this damage, you can use these systems to really indicate where the problems, the impacts were. Again, showing boundaries and centerline data, getting your GIS folks connected with whoever's running this ADMS system so that they can, generate reliable information, things like that.
So to wrap that piece up, I mean, getting your GIS people involved in your planning, getting them involved in your post-disaster stuff, real critical piece of this, and because these tools will interface with it, and you can really improve your program. I think in a lot of ways you can see where things are in real time. I use it. We have little locators, and I go out and bother people out there all the time now that I can find them.
Yeah, it helps with like staff management. I mean, you know where they are. You know if they're in the right spot.
Or they're at the Orange Julius getting a soda or a custard or something like that. So yeah, exactly.
Staff management by technology.
That's right.
So some other technology that's emerging in the field, this UAV, this unmanned aircraft vehicle. When I was in high school, my dad was trying to work on this technology using a blimp and an infrared camera to scope out hot spots after wildfires in the Everglades in Florida. And he was like, this is going to be my retirement. This was like 95, 96. And this was pre-UAV, and he was, like, this is it. The blimp is where it's at. I'm going to attach this 8-pound camera to this floating Buick, and it's going to go over the Everglades, and we're going to save lives. And it was quite a project until my sister let go of the toggle, and the blimp floated away. So that kind of favorite daughter for the rest of my life. But, he was experimenting in this, unmanned aircraft vehicle back then, and the evolution is kind of a little sad that now anybody can pick up one of these drones, but this, being able to have that bird's eye view of impacted areas where you don't have to drive every street and take pictures, you can get this sort of image, so you can identify where your impact areas are, is critical. A lot more communities are using things like this. There are some pretty heavy regulations still with FAA on line of sight and all those kinds of things.
Everybody know what line of sight means? Find the line of sight, like
you can't let this thing out of your sight. You've got to always be with it. So you've got to be walking with it. You've got to, you can't just let it go. The other, downside to this, if you ever want to get into this, Google drone accidents or drone injuries. These things can really cause damage. So you got to be really careful, and whoever's operating them needs to be trained, and they need to understand what they're doing, because the propellers can really cause a lot of bodily damage. Yeah, and they can crash.
I mean, I'm sure there's some redneck out there that really wants to shoot one. Hold my beer.
There's that. So, there's pros and cons. You might want to do some public information.
That's
say,
right,
hey,
exactly.
We're going to be flying this thing over your neighborhood. Please don't shoot.
Okay. So one thing I would say about the drones is that they're a lot being used in debris management sites. I know a lot of the debris hauling firms have used it. We've used them as well, where you're monitoring site operations, actually using them to take photographs and then use some sort of like picture weaving tool to create an accurate representation of the volume of said debris pile, so that you have a better understanding of that. So that's how they're currently being used right now. Next slide. But certainly there's some concerns, whether, public perception of attack of the drones, or whether it's weather conditions. The FAA regulations, I think that's right now probably the biggest thing out there. But certainly it's something that is, I think it's going to continue to evolve, and there's going to be a way to incorporate that technology. I think it's just a matter of, I think the price point is there. I mean, those things are like $500, $1,000 or $1,200. I mean, it's not like, they're not $20,000 like you're buying a new car or something. They're at a price point, and the data that they give you is really good stuff.
Inevitably, whenever we're doing debris management planning and we talk about damage assessment, the topic of drones or UAVs always comes up. It's the idea that, we can do this using the UAV. It makes more sense for the temporary debris management site because you're in a fixed location and you're just going up, you're not having to walk with it. With the damage assessment piece of it, still to be determined. So I know we talk about WebEOC. Those of you that are in the emergency management, emergency operations center during disasters, WebEOC was one of those programs that came out that a lot of communities use. When I was with the state of Florida, we used this really antiquated thing called Tracker, which I don't even think they use anymore. But basically, it's just a way to track information and resource requests. So a lot of public works department operations centers, you guys have a system that you use as far as people submit a ticket request, and you've got those kinds of things. With WebEOC, it interfaces with other emergency operations centers, so the cities within a county can see what's going on, and it provides that situational awareness. So there's a lot of different programs out here. WebEOC used to be like the one, but that's changing a little bit now. There's more vendors that are getting into this and providing some really great service. Just some other database systems for using, tracking 211 calls, things like that, issues, damage reports. Just I know call centers are always a hot button issue. Essentially, when you've got this large-scale disaster, you've got a lot of people that have a lot of questions related to debris. So setting up a call center, tracking all those calls, I know we've got there's some software systems out there that'll, track date, time, location, all this stuff, so that you can pull that data later on. All that data is really important too. If you can pull it, if you can count it, again, if you can't document that it happened, it didn't happen. So when you're going into your long-term recovery process, you're going into some of your special debris programs, it's really nice to be able to say, in the first 2 weeks we had, 1,200 calls or whatever it is. Now we're down to about 4 or 5 calls a day to show the progress and things like that.
So that's my number 4 thing that I'll say is debris is a really critical part of long-term recovery, whether it's getting you data, showing progress, showing that, as Karen alluded to, 311 data, started here, now it's going down, volunteer coordination, showing the long-term impacts. I'll tell you, that's a really big, important piece, whoever the long-term recovery officer is, making sure that they have access to that debris data.
There are some applications for LiDAR out there for damage assessment and things like that. So, just using this type of technology to determine, especially before and after, using these kinds of systems for that.
So I'll say this, at some point, like I was in this meeting with the Corps of Engineers last Tuesday, I think it was in New Orleans, and the guy said, hey, we were using LiDAR to do damage assessments and, blah, 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 and we got within, 10,000 cubic yards of the FEMA estimate that just drove around and they did a windshield assessment. And, he said, yeah, it's great technology, but it costs a boatload of money to do. And so, I think that's probably one of the things, it's just being cost prohibitive with some of this technology. I think LiDAR is useful. Again, the levee, the debris management, the ADMS that's not cost prohibitive. The helicopters or drones, I think, is another non-cost prohibitive. I think LiDAR maybe is challenging, but
especially if you're only coming within 10,000 cubic yards.
I know, and they were really impressed, but it's just at what cost and who's going to pay for it.
Yeah.
Certainly, some of these applications for asset inventory, again, your damaged tree canopy, secured facilities. I mean, there's a litany of opportunities that this technology can be, and it certainly has improved over the last years. There's this website, historicphotos.com, or historic aerials. We're doing a project over in Louisiana right now where we're using it and it's amazing to see the quality of aerial photography over the last, even 10, 20 years, because they have, on this website, you can plug in a certain address and you can see the 2017 aerial, 2008, and it gets grainier and grainier, and then it goes to black and white, and I mean, who knows what it's going to be, and I know that the cost has gone down tremendously, but certainly LiDAR is one of the things to keep your eye out on.
If you're using this, though, correct me if I'm wrong, you need to do a before and after in order to see the delta.
Yeah, absolutely. LiDAR applications, I think that's been something, this technology to grade loads has been talked about. Again, instead of having a monitor in one of the towers, to have the truck go under and it goes, I don't know if it makes that sound, but it should, and then it quantifies the volume of debris in that vehicle. I have not ever seen this technology actually practically used. I don't know, Rob, if you have, or Carl, have you done a project with that thing? Civil Works projects, yes, for sure. Okay, so you were using this for dirt moving, right?
For dirt moving.
Civil work.
And this is more for our internal uses than anything else. We've been using this, and it just automatically will catalog all that information, how much dirt we pulled from the bar pit, and so on.
What do you think about using it? I mean, I know that there's been a lot of talk about using it I know that there's been a lot of talk about using it in disasters. Do you see year or two being used?
It's expensive. On one of our projects in 2014, Columbia County, we actually, the monitoring firm there brought one out to be used, and it was very, very difficult. You know, if the truck's not angled just right, it won't read what's in the truck, or if it's moving too fast, if it's moving too slow. So, you know, when we first started out in the first day, each truck was having to generally go underneath the scanner for, you know, 2-3 times. And for us, we just finally, you know, told them you had to skip this. Just put a man back in the tower and let's go with it, because it starts holding up operations at that point. You know, if a truck cycle time, you know, you're increasing truck cycle times 10%, you know, you're going to, you know, elongate your project, in which when you're talking about, you know, 0 to 30 days, you're getting 85%. You want to try to maximize it. Well, I think the technology is very good. It's great for a short bed truck. For some of the larger tandem trucks that we have, it's probably not ready quite yet, I would say. But it's still working great for civil works.
From your perspective, see anything out there, I mean, technology-wise, that excites you, or that, you know, with that technology or drones or whatever else that you guys see?
We're using the drones a lot for the last couple of years. They've helped us. Specifically, we used to get a slide the before and afters of DMS locations, being able to track, in fact, that you have restored the DMSs to their original, or in most cases, much better condition than they were when you took them over. The LiDAR applications, we've got some projects going on in California with PG&E, where they're using LiDAR to detect dead and dying trees out there because of the markings. It's great technology. You made the point, it is very expensive. A utility company like a great big massive power utility like PG&E, that kind of went through it, not like most of the government at all. So they use that technology. The last slide that you had there, and I emphasize, I agree with everything Carl said there regarding the utilization of this type of technology in our industry. It's not quite there yet, for all of the reasons that Carl mentioned, and then also just simply having the number of mobile units available within the country to utilize, especially when you have these large geographic type events like a hurricane, Matthew, or Katrina, or Ike, or Dolly. There's just not that many of those types of units out there. I do like that specific technology for measuring the trucks. It's very quick technology for measuring vehicles, but again, having it available is the problem right now. As far as scanning the loads, it's at this point it's inefficient, it's slow, and it's not so much the technology as it is acclimating the personnel, the drivers, to understand what it takes to make that technology work. And again, you'll have a truck may have to do it 3, 4, 5 times before the driver gets it just right. You know, and that's a problem.
I think whenever you're talking technology, whether it's debris or other phases of emergency management, I think you really have to consider cost. You have to consider scalability and the fact that it's going to be technology that's able to be rapidly deployed, and then it's going to be outdated as soon as it gets, you buy it. So something along those definitely things to consider. I think always something out new with the National Hurricane Center, storm surge modeling, and it's going to be out there for 2017.
Yep, there's some new technology in here. You'll hear people say, I was in the floodplain, they've rezoned, and now I'm not, or I am now, those kinds of things. And then this technology is used right after the storm to measure surge. So I think before 04, 05, we used these slosh models, these slosh maps and things. And now there's just a lot more advancements in being able to detect that. Some other forecasting models before we were, kind of an area where you think some of this disturbance is going to be, and now in the new version, it forecasts it more so than just where the initial area where it's going to be generated, but then projecting where that storm is going to go. So, but meteorology, dentistry, it's kind of like there's still a lot of unknowns out there. So trying to figure out, if this is really where these things are going, it's kind of anybody's guess sometimes until you really get into that 5-day cone. So some other communication tools, and again, this is a little bit of a teaser for our next workshop. You know, getting away from these long press releases about debris management or debris operations, and really going towards a social media approach, and then also making sure that you're using communication tools that are accessible to everybody. So, you know, if you've got communities that are not technology savvy, although I think my grandmother is on Facebook, you know, she's 86 and she's on there. Mostly everybody's on there. So you can use these communication tools and reach a really wide audience. So we'll talk a lot more about that during our next workshop, just some of the different communication tools that are out there to, again, push information, but then to also figure out where your major impact areas are as well. You set up a hashtag, and all of a sudden you'll be able to see what's out there.
Oh, my favorite. Oh, well, I'll save it. I'll save it for the communication tool. I sent it to Karen. Oh, no, sorry. Go.
All right. Are there any other technologies? I know we heard from some of our vendors, but are there any other technology resources that you all are using, either in emergency management or in a debris management capacity? You have pre-developed databases or GIS tools or anything like that we didn't talk about? Everybody's really excited about the trivia game, I think.
Hanging around for it. That's good. It's good. We're going to talk case studies and then do the trivia.
So one of the storms that we've been talking a little bit about today was in Dougherty County, Georgia, city of Albany, Georgia. They were impacted by back-to-back tornadoes. So they had repetitive damage there. And I know this has happened in Texas. This has happened in Florida, where you get a tropical storm that comes through, and then you've got another storm system that comes through. They come like almost in waves. And I know in Pensacola, I think there was in 04 and 05, they just kept getting hit over and over again. When you go back to do the documentation on that, you have to prove that it was Hurricane Dennis damage, or was it Tropical Storm Irene damage, like what was it? And so it gets really difficult when you've got this repetitive, back-to-back. So in Dougherty County, they had back-to-back tornadoes. First one came through January 2nd. The second one came through the 20th or the 22nd. Which is ripped through, the first one was like the northern part of the county, and then the second one was to the southern part of the county. And there was just a tremendous amount of damage that was generated with this. They had 5 fatalities. That's just kind of showing the impact area, but there was some catastrophic damage to farming and agriculture. They had about 5,000 pecan trees that were destroyed and uprooted. These are trees that are on private property, but it's still a debris issue, and it's an economic impact issue as well. I mean, this is the #1 pecan distributor in the universe, is now severely impacted by this incident. So there's tons of root balls, as we talked about earlier, that have this historical concern. They're all over the county on both public property and on private property. So, there are a lot of unique debris issues. They've got quite a few volunteer organizations that are going out, helping the community address some of these root balls and debris on private property, while simultaneously the city and the county are also implementing debris programs, and so making sure that all those pieces are lining up and things like that. But had quite a bit of catastrophic damage to private property, including 4 mobile home parks. So we're kind of going through that process right now. But one of the things that's coming out of this is they're putting together a long-term recovery plan so that they can hopefully get some federal funding for some other programs. And one of the most impactful data sets and the most accurate data sets that we can demonstrate where the disaster damage is through the debris pickup location. So you know, they're submitting reports to Congress, they're submitting reports to their state elected officials saying, we have all this damage, you know, we need additional funding for these different programs. And we can paint that picture through the debris, you know, the debris management documentation technology. So we can show them, you know, this is all the pickup locations, and these are the impact areas. It's really helping to paint that picture for their long-term recovery process, exactly where the impacts were. We can overlay this with, you know, different GIS layers to show, you know, these areas are also in a floodplain, or these areas are also in a LMI, a low to moderate income area. You know, these areas are, you know, sites of historic significance. You know, whatever we want to do, we can overlay. This is showing exactly where the damage was. It's the best way to demonstrate that, and so we can take that data and we can use it for other applications. So. So we talked a little bit about Hurricane Matthew in Florida and the private property debris removal issue. So this is, again, in different communities within Florida, FEMA is implementing different procedures to document private property debris removal. So in some cases, they're demonstrating needs based on a percentage. In some cases, they're taking photos. You know, each FEMA representative is requiring a different type of documentation or a different type of justification for this private property debris program. So the community had to make the case to say, we, you know, this is a need, that we have the authority to do this, and then, you know, it's being implemented in different ways. So
if you, in the middle of this story, if you're not sitting there saying, you guys got to be kidding me, and you don't say that to yourself at least once, then we're not explaining this correctly, okay? So in these three communities, virtually next door to one another, three different reps are interpreting the rules three different ways. So way one is, so anyways, the guide says, if you go to the next slide, the guide says, listen, and I encourage you to read this because it's mind-blowing, but it says, hey, listen, debris removal on private properties, you can authorize it if the debris is so widespread that it threatens public health and safety. And FEMA says, look, a public interest determination needs to be made. You got to have the legal authority, and then you need to indemnify everybody. You need to identify federal government, us, me, you, Karen, you know, I don't know. Everybody needs to be identified. So go ahead. And this is what happened. One county, FEMA said, the FEMA reps that required the county reps to take them to each road, and he would only approve on a road-by-road basis before debris operations would be approved. County number two said, we're going to use debris estimates from the formula, and said, okay, well, if 10%, using this magic number of 10%, if the debris is coming from a private road, then it would be okay. And then FEMA rep 3 said, all right, we're going to say, if it's 3 cubic yards or more debris from each household, then we're approving it, okay? And I mean, this really, this is right hand, this is a true story of what 3 communities, not only what we had to deal with, but what these communities had to deal with. And so the consistency is really, really challenging, and this actually happened. And then even in South Carolina, one state over, they actually used a state ordinance, which was a proclamation, and they cited the professor, you know, at USC Medical School, you know, that this is going to have, you know, we're going to have the Zika everywhere, and you know, they got it approved there. So, I mean, so what I can tell you, it's consistently inconsistent is what I'll say.
Go ahead.
Not just took this determination, this health proclamation from the state. We also went out. FEMA sent down 5 teams, and then we spread throughout the county. We took them to some of the hardest hit areas to demonstrate to them how much debris was really in these gated communities. Now, Beaufort County is just right around Hilton Head. It's very unique in that probably over 50% of all the roads are privately gated. So everybody lives behind a gate. So it was really interesting because there was so much debris out on the roadways. It was really difficult for those gated communities to get all that debris out to the road where we could come in and collect. I actually got kicked out of the car with me. But that it was really difficult convincing them, you know, with all of the gated communities. And even after we got all the gated communities to say okay, FEMA said okay, we still had to send each gated community up for approval. So each one of those 83 ROEs that we executed, FEMA had to say okay to each one before we were allowed to go in to the community.
I'd say the gated community thing is just still an absolute hot mess there. Yeah. All right, next slide. Yeah.
I just wanted to make a comment about the Zika situation. I would assume that this is also going to be an issue this summer as well, and so documenting the health impacts, you know, coming up with that that narrative now, so that you can make sure that you mitigate as much as possible through your debris operations. Some of the fires in California. So
yeah. No, the fires in California, that was an interesting experience because I think you guys did the work out there, and you know, these series of wildfires all over the state. Valley Fire was FEMA funded, and then the state actually funded some of these wildfires as well, destroying tens of hundreds of homes that were out there. Go to the next slide, please. Asbestos. It was something that was a real big pain in the neck, and the lead, arsenic, all this type of information, you know, all this type of material that was in the ground or in the air that could potentially pollute the water, and in the debris stream had to be tested for. What were some of the other operational challenges there, Rob? Do you have any that come to mind?
Well, it's California, so everything's difficult to do out there. Your the degree of monitoring that has to take place on any sort of these projects in California. You guys talked about some of the things that were, like Carl, you guys dealt with in Savannah with the tribal monitoring. I mean, our crews, because of the various Indian tribes that were impacted by these fires in several counties in California, a crew would have to have sometimes 3 to 6 monitors with it before you could sign off on removing a pile of debris, even if that debris was just a pile of sticks, literally, or cutting a tree, or cutting limbs out of a tree, or excavating a root ball, looking for various different types of artifacts that may or may not be part of these various tribal communities. So, you know, intricacies like that we don't necessarily run into on an everyday basis in places like Texas or even Florida, your more disaster-prone states. But things like that make it extremely difficult to do this kind of work in a place like California.
Yep. This required a significant level of PPE, personal protective equipment as well, right? With HAZWOPER training and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, the state required 40-hour HAZWOPER for everybody had 40-hour HAZWOPER, and everybody was in the marshmallow suits. We were, all walking around like we were on the moon out there. Crazy stuff. But I'll tell you, it was a collaborative effort. State, PG&E, Pacific Gas and Electric. Some homeowners wanted to be out there, wanted to see what was going on.
Well, and this is with tornadoes and with fires. You know, you have complete devastation in a immediate time frame, and so the psychological impacts of these kinds of disasters are really tremendous. And so I know it's probably logistically complicated to have the homeowner out there to collect their things, but you're doing a tremendous service to your community by facilitating these kinds of things as much as possible.
Absolutely, yeah. They're really, truly, the homeowner engagement piece, when you lose everything, that locket or whatever that survives, because it's burning hot. The strong box that you have, that's the fireproof, that thing melts in one of these fires. And so to be able to find something like this and be able to be allowed to do that is important.
So I know there was a pretty extensive documentation process to just document what was found and make sure that got back to the homeowner. So that whole tracking piece for lost and found items. I know you all didn't have any fires this year, but there is a tracking mechanism so you can take a look to see what's active in the area. So there's a website you can go to see if there's any active fires in the area.
Awesome. Yes. Oh no, disaster declarations for wildfires. I'm sorry, I should have. I think there's been some active ones.
Yeah.
Let me clarify that. For sure, there's been some active ones. I guess I meant. I know what I meant. It was.
Declared.
Yeah, declared. Yeah.
Yeah, this was a screenshot taken just a few days ago, so there's a few on there that are showing active fires.
Oh, these right here? Oh, so like not too far away in Brenham area, it looks like. Okay.
So recently, especially from the California fires, Hurricane Matthew, and especially in Florida, because they are implementing different policies for different counties. There's this inconsistency in program implementation. We've seen a lot of communities that want to do an after-action report to document the things that went well and things that didn't go so great during their debris operations. If you have any type of disaster or any training exercises that you do, you should really develop an after-action report so you can document the things that went great and then work on the stuff that didn't go so great. This is part of the planning cycle, the cycle of preparedness. Sometimes I feel like I'm the only advocate for this preparedness cycle, but it really is important to document your lessons learned and your successes, because we're not all going to be here in 5-10 years when the next disaster occurs. Some of us are going to move on. Hopefully somebody is going to win the lotto and move down to Hawaii or something like that. But we're not all going to be here to pass on that institutional knowledge to the next round of emergency managers that are going to come in and have to deal with this. So if you have a system in place, a workaround, an interim process, or something that works really well, documenting that in an after-action report, and then always looking at areas for improvement, corrective actions. One of the things that John and I are doing tomorrow is we're going to sit in a room and yell at each other for a few hours. I'm going to try and get everyone to do a couple yoga poses and calm the situation down, but we're going to talk through all the things that went well and the things that didn't go so great on our last couple of activations so that we can improve. Communities do that, counties and cities. Usually your emergency management office will initiate that. They're usually the ones that'll do the after-action report, but anybody can be involved in that process. Just communicating with your emergency management and saying, hey, we've got some communication is always number one. We could have communicated better. We could have coordinated a little bit better. So just documenting some of those things in the after-action report is really important. And when you're going through your corrective actions, making sure you assign a champion or a lead for that, and then a timeline of when to get some of those things addressed and fixed. So these are just some of the kind of the basics of after action reporting, but it's an important part of the process so that you don't, and it should happen relatively quickly after the disaster, because it's hard to relive that pain 6 months later. You're going to say, oh, it wasn't that bad. It was that bad. You need to talk about it right after, and you let it out, and so that you can improve for the next time, and then making sure you got all your players there too. We've been a part of after action reports with our clients, and then we've helped facilitate them for other disasters that we weren't even a part of. So getting everybody involved for that discussion.
Before we go to the trivia game, I want to have you guys please take a moment to fill this out. And while you're doing that, I wanted to see if Mr. Rob Ray would say a few words. Ashbrit Environmentals are our sponsor for today, and tell you a little bit about the firm.
Well, thank you, John. And first of all, I want to say we're involved in a lot of these types of trainings around the country, and Tetra Tech does an incredible job. The information that they provide here on a regular basis is something that it's hard to get, and they're extremely experienced, And I'm happy that H-GAC has these folks and has had them for a long time. So first of all, let's give them a round of applause for the information of the presentation. Thank you. And I just want to take a minute, first of all, again, say thank you to everyone who did come to the presentation today. Things are always changing in this crazy industry that the Ashbritts of the world and Tetra Techs and the Series and Phillips and Jordans and those that are in this industry, we have a hard time keeping up with it, and we do it every day of our lives. So it's good that you guys took the time to come. Certainly appreciate the opportunity of being able to sponsor this. Thank you, Cheryl and Aaron, for giving us the opportunity to do this. We try and sponsor at least one of these every year. And just a real quick briefing about our company. Most of you probably are aware of us. I know for some of you, we have responded to proposals in the past for your different cities and counties. Ashbritts is one of the nation's largest national debris management firms. It's primarily what we're known for, but we also provide a ton of ancillary services as well: food, water, ice, sheltering. Especially in the last couple of years, we've been involved in a lot of shelters out in places like California with these massive fires that Tetra Tech mentioned. And so those are all services that we make available to all of our clients, including those of you here in Texas. We're not only a national but an international firm. We work all over the country, in the business for 25 years, have a $650 million bonding capacity. And that's something that's very important to our clients because it means that you don't necessarily have to pay us. We do the work today, you don't have to pay us tomorrow. We're fortunate enough to be financially stable to be able to carry a lot of the debt, the same debt that you guys have to carry until that FEMA funding comes in. So I just ask that the next time that you take a look at one of our proposals, take a good hard look at it, take a look at what we bring to the table, and maybe eventually we'll be able to do business with you guys. Hopefully you never have to use it, but we're there just in case. Okay? Thank you. Thank you, guys.
And Rob, thank you very much, Rob. Been great to work with in these. Always been a great supporter of H-GAC as well. So with that, Aaron.
Okay.
Hurricane trivia.
Hurricane trivia.
Here you go. We have some ducks, which are collector's items.
Yeah, because I think they might be retiring the ducks and going to raindrops for some reason.
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
a big fan of ducks, guys.
Oh. And my clicker.
Here, this is
Did I
what you
shut it
got to
off?
do. You got to kind of.
Oh, there we go.
Okay. Kind of rub the batteries. Okay, here you go.
Okay, so our first trivia question, and just raise your hand as soon as you know. A hurricane season runs from June. Oh, yes. You get a duck.
There we go.
So
yes.
That was a softball. That was a softball.
Can you just repeat the correct answers in case anybody's still paying attention?
Okay, so the question
We
was,
can't get there that fast. So.
the question is, hurricane season runs from June 1 to what date each year? And this is a picture of Thanksgiving, the first Thanksgiving, and the answer is November 30th. So, question 2, which organization, headquarters in Geneva, Switzerland, names the hurricanes each year? This is a tough one.
Oh, we got a maybe? ISO?
It is not. Good guess,
ISO?
though.
Anybody online that's going to guess? I'll mail you ducks.
Google.
This is a 2-duck answer right here. Anybody got their phones out? I mean, come on. That's not against the rules here, guys. It's some kind of shadow government operating over there, naming hurricanes. And what is that? UNESCO? No, that doesn't sound familiar.
No. Well, I guess we'll give a duck for the first answer.
Uh-oh.
Oh, we got a phone. That's it. It's the World Meteorological Organization.
One duck because of the phone. That's okay. But I'll give you the duck.
The first one was a softball. The second one was pretty tough. The rest of them we should be able to get. So if you know the answer, just raise your hand. We'll get you a duck if you're right. Okay, so question 3, this is debris related. Time and materials contracts can be used during which phase of debris operations? Yes. Yes.
There we go.
So during the first
all right,
emergency
I tossed
push,
it over to you. There you go.
when you're pushing debris off of the right-of-way, you can use a time and materials contract for that. For all other operations, it is unit-based. So, okay. In a single Atlantic storm season, 15 hurricanes developed in which record-breaking year? Oh my gosh, we got it. Yes. It is 2005. And that's Rita, I believe. This is Hurricane Rita coming across here. That was a good hurricane. All right, question 5. The deadliest weather disaster in U.S. history, killing over 8,000 people. All right, we got ducks over here. There's a great book by Eric Larson. It's called Isaac Storm, and Eric Larson is like an amazing author, but he writes about this, and it's fascinating, just fascinating. So, question 6. Following a disaster, municipalities should develop what to document lessons learned and corrective actions? Yes, after action report. Thank you.
There you go. Yes, you roared that.
All right.
Anybody else?
Question 7. Which state agency reviews and approves temporary debris management sites? Yes. Gotcha. All right.
All right. Here and got there.
All right. Question 8. What % of a root ball must be exposed to be considered hazardous?
85. Nope, not that much. 50%. Mr. Watson. There you go. Who is it over here? All right, Mr. Hilfiger. I don't think that's your last name, though, but.
Number 9. Which agency regulates the unmanned FAA? Yeah, FAA.
FAA. Who had it over here? Where? Who? Who? All right, you already got a duck. Okay.
All right, last question for the hurricane season trivia. What was the first named storm of hurricane season 2017? Arlene. Yes. So we are, yeah, so on April 19th, Tropical Storm Arlene sort of fizzled out in the middle of the Atlantic. So we're already on B, which is Brett, like Brett Favre, Green Bay Packers. That is Arlene. She's a famous actress.
Arlene Francis?
Is it Arlene Francis? Diedrich?
Could be, should be.
So, did anyone guess who that was? Arlene. All right. All right, that's it for our
They want to take it up home too. Get it. All right. One more, okay? And we got one right here. Anybody else? Last duck. Not going home. Oh,
Well, that concludes our program. Thank you so much for staying with us till the end. We'll see you again. Our next workshop is in just a couple weeks, so Aaron will send out an invite for it.
I think it's already been sent out, so some of you have probably already signed up. And take a cookie if you need another one.